And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It's Monday, February 25th, 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann, the co-host with my son, Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. And folks, for the next 3 hours, you're about to hear 3 hours of unbiased, uncensored news and analysis, information, of course, that you need to know in these perilous times. We broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. Our home base on the internet is HomelandSecurityUS.com. That's HomelandSecurityUS.com. You can also watch us as well. We're simulcast in high-def video, simulcast on the Christians United Broadcasting Network, also a couple of AM and FM stations, but primarily our platform is BTR. I want to thank you for joining us and thank you for your belief and trust in us as we walk through these headlines, minefield of current events together. Folks who are listener supported broadcasting, I want to thank each and every one of you who are helping us stay on the air, who have helped us stay on the air, for your prayers, for your support, for your emails, for your kindness, for telling others about the show. Actually, we're growing exponentially, and I mean that. It's just unbelievable.
Our advertisers.
Yes, indeed. Joe, welcome to the studio.
Glad to be here. Was not in studio last night. I'm in studio today. It feels good to be sitting here at the control booth, writing up a show promo we'll have up tonight on tomorrow's show.
I got to tell you, folks, well, the reason he's sitting here is because I was trying to work some controls last night on a simple conference call, and I kept bumping people off, not on the show, but just on a regular phone, and one of the individuals from the intelligence world said, it's a doggone good thing that you've got your son, because, and it's a better thing that you don't have your finger on the button for America's nuclear arsenal, because, it's just, I just can't, I don't know what, between muting myself and pressing buttons I shouldn't, it's just weird. But anyway, Joe, thanks for taking care of the control panel there. And but yeah, tell the listeners about tomorrow night, because I think tomorrow night's going to be just a fantastic show tomorrow night.
And we are going to be hitting some of the latest, most important news tonight, but we are also going to be giving a background on 9/11, and this is Judy Wood, Dr. Judy Wood, and what she has released in her book, Where Did the Towers Go? Dr. Judy Wood is a PhD from Virginia Tech. She is a professional of mechanical engineering. And since the time of 9/11, she wrote a book providing proof, physical proof in her book of what she says that really happened. This is scientific proof that she has, that she's compiled, put together, that are different from the whitewash 9/11 Commission, that are different from the theories promoted by NIST. And we know that because of 9/11, a lot of things are different now. But one thing that hasn't changed is the government's coming against people who want accountability and answers to questions about what really happened. As we know, the 9/11 Commission was a whitewash. Even the commissioners stated as much. The Bush administration was never open with the commission. They left out most of the important information pertaining to 9/11, and also let the president and vice president testify off the record in private, and lots of other things, anomalies that I wouldn't say anomalies. I would say things that were, it was a controlled release of information. They released the things they wanted you to see But everything else you can find on your own by doing research on 9/11. And she has a theory. We had Richard Gage on this was a long time ago, and he talked about the thermite. This, in Dr. Judy Wood's theory, differs from that. It talks about the use of free energy-based weapons that brought down the towers. Now, we'll let her explain how she came to the conclusion, what evidence she gathered, and how she compiled her conclusion, and explain that to you. But the question needs to be asked, how do 3 buildings, the towers, the World Trade Centers 1 and 2, which were, I think, 110, 114 stories high, built to resist plane impacts, how could both of these fall almost at free fall speed by being hit by a plane? And also, Building 7, a 47-story skyscraper, which housed the mayor's bunker, emergency bunker, the stock exchange people, the SEC, CIA, FBI, all these government agencies. That building collapsed also on the same day at 5:30 in the afternoon, and that wasn't mentioned by the 9/11 Commission, nor was it hit by a plane. And the cover of her book shows the buildings 5 and 6, which were much closer than Building 7, that still have their structure standing, but interestingly have one building has a huge hole all the way down in the middle of it, like a hole from the earth. And for those of you who are unfamiliar about what I'm talking about, tomorrow she will clear all that up. But in summary, Dr. Judy Wood has a very good book laying out the evidence and what she has found to be true on that day. Now, there are other people with other theories. As I said before, the conspiracy theory element of this is where the conspiracy theorist, the name conspiracy theorist, really is taken off. And not only is it taken off, but some in the media, mainstream media, even the alternative media, Glenn Beck said, 9/11, people who believe that 9/11 was anything other than what the government said should be locked up. And that might have been during his worst days. But this event has changed the lives of every single American, lots of people in the Middle East, through all these wars that were declared or undeclared on these Middle Eastern countries. You're muted.
Thanks. See, that's why you're here. And look, when it comes to the time when we cannot, as American citizens and as Christians and it's just as Americans, period, when we can't have an honest discussion about what happened on 9/11, the run-up to 9/11, and then the blowback from 9/11, what we're experiencing right now, when we cannot have an honest discussion about it, there's a problem. Now, Dr. Judy Wood, she conducted a very comprehensive investigation to determine what happened to the towers.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
and like you said, when it comes to a point where you're deemed a conspiracy theorist, a nut job for asking a simple question, there's a big problem.
Exactly. The reason I like Dr. Judy Wood's book, and it's like a textbook, we have a copy, and it is exactly like a textbook, but it lays out the physical, scientific, forensic evidence. And I've never seen a book about 9/11. I've never seen a website about 9/11 do or contain the information that this book has. And I just can't imagine the time it took for her to write this book. It contains physical evidence, not theories or speculation, but physical evidence that's overwhelming and conclusive, at least in my view, as to what happened. Now, she does state on the record that she does not believe that the government is responsible for executing the events of 9/11, nor does she believe that the government is not responsible for executing events of 9/11. she goes on to say that this is not a case of belief. This is a crime that should be solved by a forensic study of the evidence. Now, how much more objective can you get than that? And that is why when she comes on, it's not going to be a case of, well, Dick Cheney was in the basement of the White House or wherever with his fingers on buttons. No, it's going to be an honest look at the evidence by a qualified person, because before it can be determined who did it, before you can say, well, this person or that person or this agency was involved, you've got to determine what was done and how it was done. And that the order of crime solving is really to determine what happened, then how it happened. For instance, what kind of weapon was used, who did it, and then at that point can the why be addressed. But what we're seeing is the blowback from 9/11 today. So why are we going back to 9/11 2001? Why did we ask Dr. Judy Wood to come on? And by the way, Peter Santilli will be on with her as well, of the Pete Santilli Show. If you don't know his show, it's a good show. He's got a great show, a great following. But once again, we are going to stick to the evidence, conversation of the evidence only. We're not going to get into the who or why. We're just going to get into an examination of the physical forensic evidence. And you've got to remember what's required to legally convict someone of a crime. You can't convict someone based on belief. You can't convict someone of a crime if you don't even know what crime to charge them with. So,
yeah. And like you said, we're not going to be talking about who's responsible. We're going to be talking about the science behind the collapse of the towers and what happened in New York.
That's right. It's not speculation. Tomorrow is not about speculation. It is about forensics. It's about the physical evidence that can be and has been proved with respect to the events of that day. It has nothing to do with any conspiracy theory of any kind. And, in fact, her book doesn't mention one word about any of this. It is just a matter-of-fact layout of the evidence that the mainstream media has ignored. And even a lot of people in the alternative media and the so-called 9/11 truth movement, they've ignored. So,
yeah, look, what I've been thinking about today is look at what has happened to our nation since that day.
And that's right.
Has transformed every aspect of our nation, our society, our laws, the way we deal with terrorists or terrorism, and it has changed them for the worse. Just like we see the Sandy Hook example, one crazed gunman or alleged crazed gunman takes out or commits a crazy act of murder, and all of America should be punished for that. But this is much different because the governments, some people inside our governments, mayors, different people in big business and banking, had advanced knowledge that something was going to happen. There's proof of it in the stock market. There's proof of it in people told not to fly that day.
Right. There's
been proof admitted on international television stations about people coming here to document the attacks. So, in my belief, my personal belief is some element of the government or the intelligence agencies either conducted this operation or helped it along or let it happen. It's as simple as that. When the president had a report on his desk with the Twin Towers and a bullseye, and it said, the next targets, and it said planes could be used to hit the World Trade Center. And also they were simulating drills to that effect on the day of 9/11 when they happened, and yet Bush would come out and say, I don't think anybody in our government could envision people flying planes into buildings. Yeah, just that kind of antics, lies. There is no accountability. Not one person has been fired for, except the people who have real information. the guy from Able Danger. Those are the people telling the truth who have been the victims for telling the truth.
And how many people are familiar with Able Danger? It seems like that has been, the talk about Able Danger has been non-existent. And, it just...
Like Gibbs and the drone program? I'll just tell them it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Folks, Able Danger, just to give you just a touch of background, and I submit, I contend, in fact, I was having a conversation with somebody today in the radio industry who said, I listened to some of your people calling in. I listened, or in fact, they were part of a chat room discussion. And this gentleman said that your audience, our audience, is really well informed, and I believe that we have the most well informed audience of any radio broadcast. So of course I'm partial, but he agreed as well. But Able Danger was a classified military planning effort, if you will, led by the U.S. Special Operations Command, SOCOM, through the DIA. And without getting too far into it, they already identified some of the hijackers, right,
and reported their findings and said these people are going to be trying to attack this nation, and were not only ignored but demoted. And this is just one case. There was another guy in the FBI. The same thing happened to him. He brought all this information forward. What did they do? They moved him into the World Trade Center building the day before the attack for a new job where he died.
Well, that wasn't the day before. You're talking about John O'Neill. It was a couple of days before.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all right. And Bo Dietl had a lot of things to say about John O'Neill. John O'Neill was a lot of people's hero, both before and during 9/11 and afterwards, of course. But getting back to Able Danger, Kurt Weldon, his reputation really took a hit over Able Danger, and a lot of people's reputations and careers were destroyed over Able Danger. And the Wikipedia entry, folks, I'll tell you one thing. I don't know of anybody who should rely on Wikipedia as a legitimate source of information. Please don't do that.
And anybody who has time on their hands can actually go through and change the information on it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, we can combat that information by, if we had time, to repost information through Wikipedia. But anyway.
Yeah, and I've seen stories or information morph from something more from one line to another on Wikipedia, but just please don't rely on Wikipedia or Snopes, for example, as they have an agenda for anything of significance. I mean, for computer viruses or chain emails of some kinds, you can check with Snopes, but use that just as kind of just kind of like a one or several checks, but kind of look at it, take it with a grain of salt. But tonight we do have much news to discuss, Joe. A lot of financial news, a lot of terror threat news, and kind of a wrap up of things that we're seeing take place, or that we've seen take place over the last several weeks now. 223. It's not only just an ammunition, but a date, February 23rd. Joe attended a pro-Second Amendment rally here in our county.
There was a lot of pro-Second Amendment rallies, not only across the state, but across the country on Saturday. And I was joking with Larry from Buffalo. The rally started at noon. I was late to the party. I was joking with him saying if I was a anchor for a reporter for a regular news agency, I would be fired because of the way I showed up there and the timing. But it was very interesting. He
blended in. What Joe did, and it's kind of, let me sing your praises, if I may. He blended into the crowd. He was interacting with different people. He saw what was going on. There are about 100 people here in a community of well over a couple 100,000, and really certainly not a very significant group of people, but Joe got the barometer of the people there, and witnessed one young man.
Yeah, it was a great atmosphere. People came there to support the people who were talking about gun rights.
Right.
There was not only people, it was an open carry rally. When in Pennsylvania, you're allowed to carry openly without a permit.
And people brought AK-47s strapped on their shoulders, shotguns and such. But there was one. Oh, and by the way, the media report and how the media reported this here in our county as well as other counties was they were using terms like gun rights activists, assault weapons activists, the television, radio, and even print media. Gun rights activists, but so they were mischaracterizing the people at this rally.
Yeah,
and
I have a news report on that. So
it was very. It was you were saying though it was very. People were very well behaved there, except for one individual who was anti-Second Amendment, anti-gun, who got in the faces of people, and at which point, now this is at the close of the rally, which it was scheduled for 1 hour, and of course this young man was shouting over the speaker and really making a total fool of himself, and had to be taken away by the police.
It broke up the demonstration. And we interviewed a pastor a while back who, and we've seen this on multiple occasions, a pastor will be standing on a corner handing out literature. They will be encountered by somebody who doesn't like what they're doing. The police will get involved and arrest the pastor. This happened to a pastor who was standing outside a DMV handing out literature on the sidewalk, and some lady came up to him and took her shirt off real quick, and he was arrested for that. So what I saw, what appeared to me was the demonstration was going peacefully, everything was fine, the atmosphere was great.
Right.
There was some kind of disruption, and then the police were there instantly, along with the Parks Department, because this demonstration was held in a park, right next to the police station. And they shut it down to what it looked like to me. And I'm looking for the article, our local article, to see it if they changed it, because it was kind of vague yesterday.
Well, it was talking with somebody from the sponsorship. It concluded. So what happened at right at the tail end of the rally. So it really didn't disrupt the rally. But one thing that I found interesting, I received some information from two different sources, from two different parts of the country, saying that there were people that were attempting to disrupt their rallies as well. Now, I don't know if in your county, if you had this happen. If you did, it's rather interesting. Now we're seeing, by the way, the Obama campaign through the Obama website. Actually,
Twitter?
No. This is actually, there's going to be the Obama campaign is actually busing people to Albany, New York, to speak out in favor of Governor Cuomo's gun initiative, anti-gun initiative, or gun ban / confiscation initiative. I find it very interesting. Whenever you're involved in a rally or a protest, I don't like the word protest unless if you're involved in a Second Amendment rally or some type of event, public event.
Yeah, not a protest. It's a standing up for the rights of the American people.
Right. But if you want to know who the federal or the professional provocateurs are, or even the federal agents, look for the people with the money and the plans to disrupt, or the plans to take it further. For example, I won't give examples, but you get the idea. You can almost pick them out of a crowd if they've got the money, if they've got plans to do something that is not legal, and you don't know that person, or that person is new to the group, chances are they're what is known as an agent a federal agent, I would suspect, or somebody that's there for the purposes of making that group look bad. I say that only from experience and from historical precedent, looking back through history at all these events. But I just want to point out that February 23rd, not a lot of people showed up, but they were well behaved, at least in the county where we live. But they were well behaved. They were armed. And one thing that did catch my attention was the reporter focused on an individual who had no knowledge of this rally, allegedly, and who saw people with guns slung over their shoulder and open carry, who said, "It disturbed me greatly to see these people walking around with guns."
Yeah.
I was very disturbed by that.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
And it's interesting, there were so many people there. There were obviously the majority of people, 99.9% of them, are pro-gun, as they were wearing their guns. And then there was a lot there who weren't wearing guns, who were there just to support the demonstration. There was "Don't Tread on Me" flags, big ones that people were carrying,
right.
American flags. But they don't focus on all the people and what their comments were about the Second Amendment. They focus on one individual who was uncomfortable with all the guns. And even with all the guns that were there wasn't one shooting. Even though some guy came up and got in their face, he didn't get shot. I wonder why that is. Something had to be wrong. I mean, the gun must have jammed. I don't know.
Yeah, but right now I think we're seeing, and we had a program last night, a special program with Steve Quayle and Greg Evenson. It's archived. You can get it via MP3 or Windows Media format off of our website, and that's HomelandSecurityUS.com for new listeners. But I think what we're seeing right now is the startup of the end, because
the end of what? Our dollar being worth anything?
Yes.
Our Constitution?
Yes.
The freedoms we have? Well, because we technically, on paper, they're gone.
Well, correct. And during the second half of the show, we'll take your calls. But look, if you can't, in your heart and your spirit, and even intellectually, look around and say, "Man, there's something so wrong here." We talk about this all the time, but right now, I do believe that we're seeing the final phases, the final chess pieces being placed, being moved into position.
Yeah, and let's start with this. I want to play this quick 1 minute and 40-second audio describing the new released Justice Department memo on gun confiscation.
Yeah, this is important, folks.
Yeah, this was one of the bigger stories that came out in the last couple of days. We have the Department of Justice releasing a memo that was released on the 4th, I think, of January, says that they need gun confiscation. Not only does it say that, it says that even restricting guns, an assault weapons ban, wouldn't stop any shootings, which makes about as much sense as the actions they're taking. But here is some information on what the memo contained, and I'll post a link to the memo in the chat room.
President Obama gives a good speech, and when you listen to him talk about new gun laws, you may think he sounds reasonable. But what happens when you look at the details behind the president's policies? How would they actually work? Let's look at what Obama's own experts have to say. This internal Justice Department memo says, quote, "An assault weapons ban is unlikely to have an impact on gun violence." Unlikely, that is, unless it comes with something else. Obama's experts say that a gun ban, like the one being debated right now in Congress, will not work without mandatory gun buybacks. Mandatory gun buyback. That's government confiscation of legal firearms owned by honest citizens. And what about Obama's call for universal background checks? His own experts wrote that the effectiveness of universal background checks depends on, quote, requiring gun registration. Requiring gun registration with the federal government. That's an illegal abuse of privacy and freedom unprecedented in our history. So, the Obama administration believes a gun ban will not work without mandatory gun confiscation. And universal background checks will not work without requiring national gun registration. Still think President Obama's proposals sound reasonable? Call Congress and tell them to reject President Obama's gun control agenda and to get serious about protecting our kids, prosecuting criminals, and fixing our broken mental health system. The men and women of the National Rifle Association are responsible for the content of this message.
And there you go. That is the NRA's ad on the latest release of information from the Department of Justice and the PDF document.
Let's be clear, though. The National Institute of Justice released this document on January 13th, I believe it was, or 14th of this year. What is the National Institute of Justice? Well, it's the research, the research arm of the actual Department of Justice. Now, they also tag along with the Bureau of Justice Statistics and the Office of Delinquency Protection and other Office for Victims of Crime and so on. It's just one arm of the Department of Justice. It was established back in 1968, ushered in under the Omnibus Crime Control and Safe Streets Act. But it's a component, and this is important, it's a component of the Law Enforcement Assistance Administration. And that's what it was known as before it was renamed to NIJ in 1978. The NIJ is really an organization, well, it's headed by a political appointee currently, John Lobb. The author of this document is not a law enforcement official. He's a civil servant. That's it.
Right. And what people need to understand is a lot of these PDFs that come from intergovernmental agencies, sometimes even state on there, these are the views shared expressly by the writer. A lot of them get implemented into plan, into laws. So they're more than just opinions.
Oh, yeah.
This memo, it says the NRA obtained it, and it calls for national gun registration and confiscation. The 9-page cursory summary on current gun control initiatives was not officially released by the Obama administration. The DOJ memo states the administration believes that a gun ban will not work without mandatory confiscation. It also talks about mandatory gun buyback programs, which is the same as confiscation. They're forcing you to turn in or sell your gun back to the government. Now, switching gears a little bit here, but on the same topic, the buyback program. There's a pastor in St. Louis who is planning a buyback program for toy guns from kids.
Conditioning, control, mental conditioning. If we're made to believe, especially under the color of clergy, if we are made to believe that a toy gun is bad, especially when it hits our moral and ethical and spiritual or religious compass, when you've got a member of clergy doing that, especially with toy guns that are toys, that is a method of conditioning well beyond anything that we've ever seen. Understand we're being conditioned. What I'm concerned about, and I know that Joe has been researching this a lot together, what we're concerned about is how this is going to be coordinated, how things are going to be coordinated with the United Nations gun grab, which is on pace now for next month. You see, what we're witnessing, and I know people, especially in political forums, in the political context, will say, well, the United Nations, the treaties, they're not binding and so on. And technically they're correct. But just the fact that we are talking about working with the global initiatives by the UN is dangerous in and of itself, because don't forget, it was Christmas Eve that the UN General Assembly approved a resolution to renew negotiations on the arms trade treaty.
The small arms treaty?
Right. This is last Christmas Eve. And right away, America committed itself to engage in talks. Now, does that mean that, well, this is going to be... It doesn't mean anything except that we are now opening ourselves up to this possible alignment with a global organization that could have a dominance over American law. Now, I don't believe that it will get to that point necessarily, or as quickly as some people say it will, but I do believe that there's a component of the United Nations here, a component of the globalist plan that will play a part in the United States gun confiscation, because it never stops at registration. It goes from registration to confiscation.
Generino stated that.
Right.
Many people have stated that. Registration leads to confiscation.
And there is no other reason for establishing a federal database or a federal registry of weapons beyond the confiscation aspect. If you look at other countries, and here's a lot of people get really emotional and start really going off on going crazy about this. And I understand the passion behind it, as well there should be. But if you look at different countries like Australia, the UK, and Canada abandoned their national registry because of its cost and inefficiency, but that's not going to stop the United States. But part of this, so we have to look at this from a well-grounded point of view, I believe. You've got the United States starting now to talk with, or on the same levels with the United Nations for a specific measures to implement here in the United States. Now, would that turn into a law or a treaty signed by Congress? It doesn't have to. That's the point I guess I'm trying to make. It does not have to. Just the fact that this is being done tells us where we're headed.
Yeah, the Congress doesn't have to ratify any treaties. They don't have to take any action, as Obama they openly stated and demonstrated his willingness to use executive orders to do this, and stated as much so for everything else, the economic issues, civil rights issues, international issues. If the Congress won't act in a manner that he wants them to, in a way that he agrees with, well, he'll do it himself.
Well, the perhaps one of the most startling things I saw was the Hillary Clinton changed her position. Now she's out of the picture supposedly, but within hours of securing his re-election, Obama placed a late-night call to the United Nations delegation, ordering them to vote in favor of passage of I believe it's L11, and that's for L11, the resolution. I believe that's the number for
Sure.
Okay, but essentially for the arms trade treaty. So why? One of the first phone calls after re-election did Obama make this call? Why did he do it? What was the pressing importance of it? You see, so there's something under the surface. There are things going on within this Obama regime, giving where Obama is actually giving the green light to the globalist gun grab, and we have to really understand that we could get blindsided by a UN initiative. But as soon as we bring this up, or as soon as anybody brings this up, it's almost as if, Joe, that we're talking like we've got 2 or 3 heads. It's a bizarre thing because people don't believe that this could happen. But, back in July, there were 51 senators. They sent a letter to Obama and Clinton saying, no, stay away from this. But yet, again, like I said, within hours after his reelection, Obama quickly contacted the U.S. delegation to the UN and said, hey, let's go for it. Now, Brian Wood of Amnesty International, he's all in favor, obviously, of a gun grab, an international gun grab, because of the human rights and abuse factors. Well, that according to Amnesty International. But the gun rights advocates, the people, the Second Amendment proponents, oppose any approval, any discussion of this treaty, because it does seem a little bit more, or it seems more than a little incongruous that the United States, a nation that places such a high value in gun ownership, that is enshrined in its Bill of Rights, participates in an organization that opposes gun ownership so staunchly that it has an Office for Disarmament Affairs. Did you know that? An office, by the way, that the U.S. Deputy Director, Office of Weapons Removal and Abatement, Bureau of Political Military Affairs, Stephen Costner, announced very proudly would be moving from Geneva to our country, our home soil, to New York City. So don't believe what you're hearing about the ineffectiveness of the UN.
Yeah, and one last point here to make on the gun issue. I was talking earlier with you before the show about the statement, they want to make us victims through disarming us. But does the government really care about you being a victim? Does it care about you surviving attempted armed robbery? Does it care about an individual being shot on the street corner? No. You are going to be a victim, but it's not of random crime. You're going to be a victim of their crime.
Well, that's, yeah, in a way, too. Think of Alex Jones had the right idea when he grabbed the name Prison Planet as a URL, or as a website name, Prison Planet, because this is what we're talking about. We are on, or we will be on, a prison planet. The guards will be the globalists. The guards will be the New World Order people, the elite, the few, the selected, those people, and we will be the inmates, and it's not going to be very pleasant. This, on a smaller scale here in the United States, is already taking place. Let's be very clear about this. And let's also be clear, too, what we talked about last night. We've gotten emails, so many emails today, and I want to thank each and every person who has emailed. We've heard from 5 different countries, not including 6 different countries if you include the U.S., about last night's program. Steve and Greg, and one of the biggest issues, or one of the biggest topics that questions that we heard about was what's going to happen when everything's going to happen, and with Greg Evenson saying that it's all really gearing up for just a confluence of events that will take place in kind of a rapid order, the economic meltdown, the gun grab, the martial law type thing taking place. And I'm not trying to scare people, but once you have societal collapse and economic collapse, it's obvious that martial law is going to be implemented under the guise of keeping the peace, and from there, it's just going to degrade rapidly. And some say too. I was reading something. It was an op-ed from 2009, and somebody had written this. I don't even know who to quote or who to attribute this to, but in 2009, somebody was talking about the 1-hour meltdown. It was like I said, an op-ed piece once a meltdown begins, in less than 1 hour, it will quickly escalate far beyond anyone's ability to control or manage. And it's going to take place on a worldwide basis, perhaps. And this was based on 5 basic assumptions, this 1 hour meltdown. The first one being banks and financial institutions around the world cannot withstand a full-scale bank run. That's true. The second one, governments, the vast majority of governments, the leaders all over the world are relatively intelligent individuals. They'll quickly understand the ramifications of a bank holiday, and therefore they're going to shut down their offices right away. They're going to empty the buildings, lock the doors, bar the doors, and any transaction in progress, including, think about this, including trials. They're going to immediately be halted, postponed until a future date. All level government officials would just take a powder, so to speak, and they're going to disappear to remote, safe, unknown locations where the angry masses are not going to be able to get a hold of them. And retail businesses, they're not going to be able to process simple transactions because in a meltdown of that type of scale, you're not going to be able to buy gas with your debit card or your ATM card or whatever you call them now. So what's going to happen there? Well, people are going to demand. It's just going to be a mess unless you've got cash. At that time, it's going to be a mess. Criminals, anyone who with any criminal tendencies, they're going to be waiting for this to happen. And this will be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for them to improve their own financial situation and lifestyle, of course. But normal, average people will also begin looting, because especially the ones without having the preparations or the mental and spiritual preparation that hopefully we offer, they're going to be breaking into grocery stores as a matter of self-preservation. Think about this. So are you mentally and spiritually prepared for what could happen? Are you practically prepared? Have you made practical preparations? As we ask all the time, how are your preps going today? Over the weekend, maybe did you go shopping? Did you buy an extra can of food or an extra box of something or whatever? Just keep your focus, too, on preparing. We don't know when this is going to happen. We do know that at least I believe this is going to happen, and I'm telling Joe this too. Something is going to take place that's going to cause a significant change in lifestyle. So practical preparations, spiritual preparations, mental preparations. And aside from that, make sure your family's prepared too. Make a plan with your family in the event communications go down, where to meet at any given time. So let's go ahead and move on.
Moving on, the Pope, interestingly, made some changes through a executive order style.
Papal order, yeah.
Yeah, the Pope changed Catholic law to allow earlier start for conclave. And this is something that I'm not sure the history on how long this, if this has happened before or how many times the laws have been changed or how they've been changed, but this Pope, before he stepped down or announced he was stepping down, changed the rules, allowing the conclave to start, or this election of the new Pope to begin before this Pope resigns. Also, there was a cardinal who stepped down, which is, I don't want to say unprecedented, but it's not in line with the rules that they have in place. This out of Reuters: cardinal departure darkens mood as Pope allows early conclave. A senior cleric resigned under duress on Monday, and Pope Benedict took the rare step of changing Vatican law to allow his successor to be elected early, adding to a sense of crisis within the Roman Catholic Church. With just 3 days left before Pope Benedict becomes the first pope in some 6 centuries to step down, he accepted the resignation of Britain's only cardinal elector, Keith O'Brien, who was to have voted for the next pope. O'Brien, who retains the title of cardinal, has denied allegations that he had behaved inappropriately with priests over a 30-year period. He could have attended the conclave despite his resignation, but said he would stay away because he did not want the media attention to be focused on himself instead of the process of choosing the next leader.
What are we looking at here?
O'Brien's self-exclusion came as the Vatican continued to resist calls by some Catholics to stop other cardinals tainted by sex scandals. And I heard, I think it was on Alex+Jones, I got a chance to listen to part of his broadcast today, and he talked about this, about the constant sexual scandals that are coming out of the Vatican. Not only that, he talked about the globalists bribing the Vatican because of this knowledge, and noting that they could decide to release this information and make it public, kind of like, I think he compared it to the European television scandal, the BBC, where they had a very famous, well-known, I don't know if he was a reporter, actor, that is now come to light. It's been the biggest scandal in the history, where this man abused women, children, over decades and decades, and it was kept quiet by the news agency.
Well, look, what are we seeing happening, though, in the larger sense with the Vatican? Are we seeing the prophecies of St. Malachi playing out? Are we seeing what Malachi Martin talked about? Are we seeing a combination of things? Because, and this is not about Catholics. Please, you understand, this is about the Vatican. This is about a power structure.
Now, let me add this, because you hit on an important point, and people in the chat room were talking about this well before we started talking about the Pope. As far as denominations are concerned, it seems that some people, a lot of people really, cling to their denominations as though it was as important as the messages in the Bible, as the law, what we should follow, the way we should live and act in the Bible. Then I compared the denominations as the governments of church. They set, no matter what denomination, the heads of each one, Protestant, Presbyterian, etc., decide the rules for that denomination. And we've seen a lot of rule changing, especially in the U.S., tolerating gay marriage, changing the definition of marriage. We need to get as far away from the denominational mindset as possible. The only thing that's important is our salvation through the faith in Jesus Christ and sharing his message with others. Everything else besides that is really...
well, you know how I look at denominations, seriously, especially doctrinal differences in denominations. I look at that as race. In other words, when I look at a person, race doesn't come... I don't care what your race is. You're a person. It's not what's on the outside. It's not the color of one's skin. It's what one believes in their heart. It's right. It's their integrity and character and ethics and values. That's what's important. So to me, denominations are just like it would be like me saying, well, there's a black. I have got a black friend. No, I got a friend. Okay. I mean,
answer me this: was Jesus a Protestant? Was he a Catholic? Was he a Mormon?
I believe he was a
Christian. He was a Christian.
Well,
he started Christianity.
Yeah, now you're going to get into
that list by
right, but you're going to get people saying, "No, he was a Jew," and
he was Jewish, but he did not preach. He expanded on the Ten Commandments. He came to break the barrier of communication and to free us from the bondage of sin. As when he came, he changed a lot of things. One, the way God communicated with people. He used to have prophets. He used to have to talk to people. And a good example of this is Moses. He talked to Moses, and on one occasion, he talked to everybody who was with Moses. And most of them were yelling at him, telling him to stop, because it was deafening. It was mind-piercing. They couldn't understand, and certain people couldn't handle it. Well, when after Jesus died, there was a new covenant. Jesus and the Holy Spirit resides within us instead of having to communicate audibly.
Right.
He communicates within us.
But what got us started down this road is the fact that people have doctrinal differences, or people look at the different denominations as, well, Catholicism is right, Protestant being Protestantism, or vice versa. To me, that's like the theater of Republicans versus Democrats. Let's just leave that alone in terms of let's look at the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is
it divides the church. The denominations divide is a method of division, or has turned into one.
Right, and you know what? It's just I got to tell you something. I just get to the point of I don't even read emails where somebody's saying, well, you've got to address doctrinal issues. No, we don't have to address that. We have to address just what's in the Bible. Believe what's in the Bible. Use that as the rock of your salvation, and that's it. Okay, because everything else that divides or is divisive. And I'm not running from any argument, by the way. It's not my intent. But let's talk about the bigger picture. But we were talking, and see how this kind of slopes right down into, you talk about the Vatican, and all of a sudden now you're talking about all Catholics. No.
I wanted to address this, though.
I know, but I mean that. But when you mention things about the chat room, but I guess what we're looking at, how does the Vatican, not as the representative of Catholics in America, but how does the Vatican fit into this global governance side of things? They've got a lot of money. This is what we have to look at.
They announce their support for it.
Right. So this is what we should be focused on, not the smaller issues, the larger issues.
Yeah. And just let me give you this as an example. The church I attended, once they decided to vote in homosexual clergy members to be able to serve.
Right.
I said, I'm not going to be part of a church that, goes along with that. I'm not going to be a part of a church that goes along with the politically correct, I don't want to offend anybody agenda. How can you, as a leader of a church, disobey the laws of God to please governments or people, ungodly people, or people who are living in sin? We know Jesus came and sat with the sinners, helped the sinners, came to be with them to teach them.
Right.
He didn't promote their ideas as being good and tolerable, though, did he? No.
No, not at all. All right. Now, Joe, I found something here. I'm breaking from script a little bit here, but I want to just tell the people I did talk with my DHS Insider individual today. And I'm not talking out of school here, but there is something that I happen to see that coincides with our discussion today, folks, and I'm just going to share it with you. I've not written about this. I have not mentioned this, but our conversation did lead to something that I found on Before It's News, the Before It's News website. I think it was over the weekend, that one, I don't know, it was Saturday, Sunday, something like that. It was Sunday. But it was about what we must do when facing martial law, and I kind of want to expand on just a couple of things here. Whoever wrote this says it's time to get serious. Martial law is the system of rules that become reality when the military takes over the regular administration of justice in the land. And whoever wrote this and wherever they got this from, I'm not sure, but the conversation I had with the DHS individual says, look, there is something coming down here. It is close. By close, don't know if that's a week, a month, or even a year. A year? Hey, it could be. Look, it could be, because things happen all of the time. I mean, plans change, the objectives don't. But when you see officers, when you see military officials or military officers or military personnel training in urban areas for something, it's just a matter of time. And It's just really it is, because certainly they're not training here in America for overseas, whether it's Afghanistan or Iraq. So a couple of points that were made in this before its news article, wherever they grabbed it from. I think it's kind of an aggregator news site, but a couple of things. Never take the government's word at face value. That's very true, except when they tell you that they will kill you. That's very true. According to my DHS source, there's a dual purpose for the ammunition purchases, of course, for domestic use is number one, and the second aspect or component of this is to make to have a monopoly on the ammunition. They know they're going to need it for domestic use, but to take it out of the circulation and to not only cause an ammunition shortage. The second thing is advice, what we must do, kind of advice. Keep your mouth shut. Don't tell anyone anything that could get you in trouble. Now this is after the point when things are already in rapid decline and we are in the midst of, shall we say, martial law, or they're at the very beginning of martial law. And that's something that I just want to say, now is the time to get your inner circle together. Now is the time to start maybe making some inquiries with people within your inner circle, or establishing your inner circle, that is. I'm going to continue just a touch more after the break, but folks are listening to the Hagmann and the Hagmann Report on this, the 25th day of February 2013. With me is Joe Hagmann. I'm Doug Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Folks, stay with us. We'll be back in about 2.5 minutes. Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eileen Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com. Or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
Buy a shotgun. Buy a shotgun.
Joe Biden on self-defense for women.
If you want to protect yourself, get a double-barrel shotgun. As I told my wife, I said, Jill, if there's ever a problem, just walk out on the balcony here, or walk out, put that double-barrel shotgun and fire 2 blasts outside the house.
More than 300,000 women face aggravated assault every year. And Joe Biden's answer?
Fire 2 blasts outside the house.
Great advice, Joe. Not only would that be illegal, but a woman would then face an attacker with an empty shotgun. For tips on safe and responsible gun ownership, ask the NRA, not Joe Biden.
Hold on to your seat. The Hagmann and Hagmann flight is now taking off. Doug and Joe Hagmann have cleared the runway of TSA agents, jihadists, political crackpots, and global elitists. Now get ready for some real news. Here they are, Doug and Joe Hagmann.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of this special Monday, February 25th edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. The first hour we really spent a lot of time on the new Department of Justice memo, what that means, what they say in there, and got into some new information released out of the Vatican about a cardinal stepping down, about the Pope changing the laws to allow the conclave to start before his resignation. During the break, you heard a NRA commercial. That was pretty funny. The NRA turned Joe Biden's advice for women on how to defend oneself into a really truthful statement, taking what he said, that women need to, if you think there's a problem, go outside, fire 2 shots with a shotgun outside, and that'll deter the attackers. And what the NRA says is accurate. First of all, you can't just go firing shots off in the air. That's not legal. Second of all, most shotguns, depending on what you have, don't carry more than 2 bullets.
Unless you've got a Mossberg Persuader that carries 7 shells. Right. But a lot of the old-fashioned family type pass down, the collectibles that people have just a 2 to 4 shot capacity. So is Joe Biden now going into the survivalist training business? Is that what he's doing, offering gun advice? Wow. Yeah, indeed. Before the break, we were just talking about a couple of things. The last thing I want to say is when I was talking to my DHS contact, we mentioned about the cyber warriors as well. The cyber warriors that are out there. They're over 3,500 strong, and there is a story at HomelandSecurityUS.com. There's a story there that I just put up today about Obama getting caught. Well, Team Obama getting caught for peppering Twitter with false, fictitious accounts. Folks, Hagmann and Hagmann Report listeners, you guys knew that early on. You knew that this is going to be taking place. Watch for more of this. Understand that this is going to be taking place. But the last thing I want to say from my DHS source in reference to that article, I believe it was on, like I said before, it's news. Right now is the time to just start building your inner circle if you can. If you don't have anyone, don't try to, or don't put an ad in Craigslist or whatever, some personal section. Don't do that.
Well, you're never alone.
You're never alone. That's right. You've got us, and you've got God, and you've got. If you really don't have any family, friends, or anybody, I understand that. Pray, and of course, we're your extended family. But currently, if you're like most people, you do know others. Begin right now with the utmost of care. Develop a survival network, a group of people with certain skills or even resources. You might know someone who knows someone that can help in a situation that we will be facing. And this is important, but according to my DHS source, the gloves are off now, and nothing really significant in terms of hard information, hard intelligence, except to say the gloves are off. Watch for false flag events, and once again, the springtime came up as well as the fall came up in terms of potential problematic times. DHS is preparing, is hardening as they have been, but they're doing it with a little bit more, I would call it a little bit more certainty right now, preparing for something in the immediate future. So I just want to say that. We don't. I mean, obviously, we've been talking about this, but just keep that in the back of your mind.
Yeah. And I want to hit two quick audios real fast. They're both very short, under a minute each one. First,
I heard
former Obama press secretary Robert Gibbs says he was told to deny the existence of a deadly drone program. Now, I'm going to play this, and following this, I'm going to play CBS Bill Palante's voicing of what is happening with MSNBC hiring David Axelrod and Robert Gibbs.
Please pay attention to both audio clips.
Let's play the CBS one first because it makes the Gibbs
second one. Yep.
Yeah. This is Bill Palati talking about what is happening with MSNBC and their undercutting of the First Amendment with their state-run media.
Bill Plant, you've been patrolling that building since Ronald Reagan. Does the White House press look a little self-involved, a little whiny, as I said earlier, complaining about this Tiger incident?
We've gotten used to being called whiny lapdogs. I've heard it for 30 years. But this is not about a picture of Tiger Woods. This is about access to the president. And access to the president has been cut and pushed and curtailed over every administration I've covered. And here's the nub of it, Howie. This administration has the tools to reach people on their own. They don't need us as much. And to the extent that they're able to do that, they're undercutting the First Amendment, which guarantees a free press through many voices. If they put out their own material, it's state-run media.
And there you go, state-run media. Now, here is former Press Secretary Gibbs talking about how he was told to deny the drone program existed, even though it obviously existed and could not be covered up.
That are and will remain highly sensitive and very secret. But let me give you an example here, Chris. When I went through the process of becoming press secretary, one of the first things they told me was, you're not even to acknowledge the drone program. You're not even to discuss that it exists. Wow. And so I would get a question like that, and literally I couldn't tell you what Major asked, because once I figured out it was about the drone program, I realized I'm not supposed to talk about it. But here's what's inherently crazy about that proposition. You're being asked a question based on reporting of a program that exists. Right. So you're the official government spokesperson acting as if the entire program, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Right, yeah. I think in many ways, and I think what the president has seen, and I have not talked to him about this, so I want to be careful. This is my opinion. But I think what the president has seen is our denial of the existence of the program, when it's obviously happening, undermines people's confidence overall in the decisions that they're governing.
Now, be careful. Do not think that Gibbs has jumped ship. Please don't think that, because he is, in fact, he might even join Obama's cyber team, if you will, or the Facebook executive branch presence, according to information from Fox News way back when. He might still, in fact, take part of a larger scale operation with Obama. So while he's coming clean with regard to the drone program, and while MSNBC is essentially admitting, or they're talking about MSNBC as a state-run propaganda arm of this regime, and I call it a regime on purpose, things are starting to become less obscure, and people are now developing, the masks are coming off. Yet, but Joe, you know what? It's almost as if they don't care.
MSNBC, first of all, but they don't care.
They see, and that's how you can tell the time is becoming short, is when people don't care. They don't need the masks anymore. It's kind of like getting, you're in trouble if you get kidnapped by people that aren't wearing masks.
Right.
It would make me, you understand the concept behind that, obviously.
Yes. And I talked about this last week, the end of last week, driving here. Sometimes I listen to classical music. Sometimes I listen to Sean Hannity or Glenn Beck. Sometimes, whenever I drive here, whatever's on that station. And he was talking about, Sean Hannity was about how all the other media outlets are compromised, are controlled, are only there to spill the government propaganda. But Fox was so much different. You know, they weren't a part of that.
Right.
And, I mean, the lies that come from that, from those statements, well, we don't have time tonight to really get into all that. But, yeah, Fox is just as guilty for, if not lying, withholding the truth.
Well, I think we have to look at it at the larger scale of the mainstream media, the knee-pad media, as some call it, the lapdog media, whatever you want to call it. It's the status media. Anything that's out there, whether it's CBS, NBC, ABC, MSNBC, Fox, whatever, is controlled. Just like Robert Gibbs was told, look, you don't even acknowledge the program exists. The orders are the same for all of the networks, or I shouldn't say the same. I mean, the orders are tailored for the different networks, but the concept is the same. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how it plays out. So understand that we're not getting the truth. And even some of the alternative media, I've been noticing this. Some of the alternative media outlets I'm a little concerned about because they are falling back into perhaps even regressing into this, well, as Steve says, there's no political solution for a spiritual problem. They are totally ignoring the fact of spirituality and how it plays into the problems that we have. And right now, I've got to tell you that really there is no political solution for spiritual problems, and our country is rife with spiritual problems. So we have to incorporate both solutions, the practical and the spiritual, into this. And if you decidedly cut out the spiritual, then you really have in my view, you've got a real bad. It would be like not storing water in your preparations, or not storing certain foods or whatever in your preps. Or alternative energy supply will say you'd be missing a big component of your preps if you ignore the spiritual side of things.
Of course, I mean without that you have nothing. I was talking with somebody about the actual social breakdown of our society, to where there is unrest, there is no order. Are you, and this goes for us too, none of us are prepared to fight a 24/7 war for survival.
No, we're not.
Not physically, not mentally, hopefully spiritually, because that is the only thing that will save us, is the protection that the Lord will give us in those times, the protection and direction we will receive from Him in those times. And that's why it is so important. And, we've been led to really not only bring you the news, but to talk about the solutions. Everybody says, so many people talk about the problems but never mentions the solutions. Well, most people who offer solutions, they do not involve the real solutions. As an example, going back to the same conversation I listened to on Hannity, he was talking about the sequestering issue and the debt. Oh, the problem is Obama. The problem is this. The administration did this policy. The Congress doesn't do this. Never addressing the real problem of the Federal Reserve's control of our money system, the private organization controlling our money system.
Yeah, and
they don't address the real solution to every problem we go through.
If
in the Bible.
That's true. That's very true. And people have to realize that. And I hope you do, and I think our listeners do. You mentioned the Federal Reserve. I do have a report coming out because we talk about an economic collapse. We talk about the dollar tanking. We talk about all of this. Well, what's the basis? How do we get here? Well, we're witnessing the final stages of the greatest financial fraud ever perpetrated on the American people today. behind the massive debt, behind the current talks of sequestration, and the threat of massive pending layoffs, there exists a story that must be told and understood by every American, and it's a truth that too few understand and even fewer still talk about. Now, understand this. Our economic system has been rigged. Understanding exactly what is being done to us, our country, our economy has been deliberately made difficult to a person of average or even above average intelligence by anarchists and the architects of our demise. The process continues today, and much of it is done in secret or behind closed doors. Right now, every person on the planet, and for the last century, every person on the planet is being robbed of their wealth by a select group of people. Worse, they're robbing your children, your grandchildren, and further generations of their wealth not yet earned, and by extension, their time not yet invested, while making you believe that their enrichment is your moral obligation. In other words, the tax robber barons, the central bankers, it's your moral obligation to enrich them. It's a mental conditioning process on a grand global scale. And I just want to mention this, how we got here. Again, I'm working on a report because some people have asked, gee, how did we get here? And not really understanding the Federal Reserve System. And I know educated listeners, people that understand this, please bear with me just for a moment. Today, a significant aspect of understanding why we find ourselves in our current financial mess is to understand exactly how we got here. Like most events, we're witnessing the ongoing shredding of our Constitution by both sides of the political divide. If you still believe that there is a political divide, yet...
I'm sorry, I was muted. There is a political divide. The people who are still relying or having hope that there will be some sort of political solution to all this versus those who don't.
But see, we're living a lie right now. We've been lied to so much that we don't even see the lie for what it is. The unconstitutionality of what's taking place. But thanks to thanks to the incremental infusion of the communist goals into our legal and societal framework, into that framework or the fabric of America, people have been intellectually hobbled by a very complicit media and a compromised educational system, because for years the educational system has been impotent in teaching us the real, true nature of things. We have to discard revisionist history. We've got to know the truth behind the larger global scheme. And once we know that, by default, that'll tell us what we have to do to get out of the mess we're in, if that's even possible at this point, and identify those who are responsible, both past and present. Now, folks, I don't know if you know the history on this, but the founders of our country, obviously, they fought a difficult war of independence to break free of the constraint and the oppression from England. The blood that was shed on the battlefields over 2 centuries ago resulted in the creation of our Constitution. Specifically, though, Article 1, Section 8, Part 5 of our Constitution states that the Congress and the Congress only shall have the power to coin money and regulate the value thereof. But you see, that's been violated again and again to the detriment of all Americans. But where does this start? I mean, there's a rich history of our country's monetary system and a few significant events that occurred before the 20th century that we can get into, but we won't for the purposes of brevity here. But I just want to take you back a little bit in response to just in the last century alone, in response to a Wall Street orchestrated panic of 1907. There was a 50% fall in the stock market back in 1907. That led to the creation of a National Monetary Commission. The National Monetary Commission was created by the U.S. Congress in 1908 and signed into law by Roosevelt. Now, you think, well, why is this so important? Well, you've got to understand how this all evolved. that National Monetary Commission was ostensibly created to prevent further financial panics and economic troubles. Again, 1907, bam, half the stock market. A lot of people lost lost everything. Well, the known as the Aldrich-Vreeland Act, it was a Republican-led initiative, Republican at the time. It was introduced by Nelson Aldrich. Now, who was Nelson Aldrich? Folks, you're going to get a kick out of this. Aldrich was a business associate of J.P. Morgan, and who do we have? We hear J.P. Morgan Chase, but J.P. Morgan, and he was the father-in-law of John D. Rockefeller. That's who Nelson Aldrich was. So even back in 07, 08, we are putting our financial house in the hands of the Rockefellers and the Morgans of the world. Go figure. He was ultimately named, by the way, Aldrich was, as a senator. He was named as the head of the National Monetary Commission, which was a group that spent, get this, 2 years in Europe studying the structure of their banking system and their financial system. So they come back a couple of years later, and under the cover, well, actually they came back and kind of did nothing, but a couple of years later, under the cover of darkness, a meeting, there was a meeting of about half a dozen of the wealthiest people in America. You've heard about this. In fact, recently there was something about the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. I think we had talked about this show, didn't we? Creature from Jekyll Island? I don't know. G. Edward Griffin wrote the book. But there was a meeting on Jekyll Island. The meeting was set up by this Nelson Aldrich, what I just talked about. It was to be held on Jekyll Island. And by the way, Jekyll Island, who owned Jekyll Island? Well, it was purchased in 1888 by J.P. Morgan and William Rockefeller, the brother of J.D. Rockefeller or John D. Rockefeller. So, wow, isn't it funny how these names keep popping up? But late on the night of November 22nd, 1910, a long time ago, Aldrich, his personal secretary, and 6 of the wealthiest men on the planet boarded this one little train, one little train car, in secrecy and traveled 1,000 miles, roughly, from Hoboken, New Jersey to Jekyll Island. And there they met for 9 days, this group of 6 men, ostensibly to go hunting. That was the story at the time. Well, who were these 6 people? In my research, I found different names, but based on my research, and I believe this to be true, based on various citations, even 100 years later, it's kind of a little bit cloudy, but Aldrich was there. A. Piot Andrew, the Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Treasury, was there. Frank Vanderlip was there. He was the president of the National City Bank of New York. Henry Davison, the senior partner at, get this, J.P. Morgan. And, by the way, Davison was considered Morgan's personal emissary. Charles Norton, president of the First National Bank of New York, a Morgan-dominated bank, a J.P. Morgan-dominated bank, and Benjamin Strong, also of J.P. Morgan, and, of course, a name I'm sure everyone is familiar with, Paul Warburg. He was a German immigrant working for Kuhn, Loeb and Company. But anyway, a 9-day conference on Jekyll Island. They even, by the way, there was this kind of like a resort hotel, if you can picture this, where they had people working there as caretakers and whatever. They sent those people home for a couple of weeks and brought in their own servants or people to help them. But the secrecy was so great they were known as only the First Name Club because they only used the first names. And we were instructed, each and every one were instructed by Aldrich, do not use your last name, only your first name with one another. See, that was the framework that was used for the greatest financial fraud, the greatest financial Ponzi scheme that still exists today. And as a direct result of that 1910 meeting that lasted for 9 days that November, we got the Federal Reserve, or the Fed, that was created as a result of that. But I'm skipping a lot of history here intentionally. On December 23rd, 1913, Woodrow Wilson signed the Federal Reserve Act into law after it was passed in a nearly empty Capitol. Many of the lawmakers, especially those from the west part of the country, because back then you couldn't just board a plane and fly, back to wherever. No, it took days to get back to where you had to go. Well, they passed this law with a quorum, but a very small number of people. Now, it's important to understand that during the 3 years between the meeting at Jekyll Island and the passage of the act, there's a rich history of deception, subterfuge, and even the influencing of the presidential election that brought Woodrow Wilson, the governor of New Jersey, think John Corzine, and former president of Princeton University into office over William Howard Taft. And think of Taft as being like really a favorite incumbent. He was the guy in the elections of 1912, by the way. If you study the elections of 1912, you can see the chicanery that went on in the fact that perhaps one of the most interesting elections, presidential elections in the history of our country, because what happened with 1912, you see the central bankers, and you have to look at it through the light of, or through the prism of the fact that Americans at that time did not want a central bank. There were issues with respect to a central bank. Specifically, there was the first Bank of America that was fought. I'm trying to think if it was Andrew Jackson, I believe. Well, Andrew Jackson was one who fought President Andrew Jackson fought Alexander Hamilton. That was a second national bank. That was going to be a central bank. Well, Jackson knew that, no, we could not have a central bank. By the way, Andrew Jackson's portrait on the Federal Reserve note is kind of a slap in the face to Andrew Jackson. And Thomas Jefferson versus Alexander Hamilton, the fight against the first bank of the United States. It was a central bank that was backed by none other than James Rothschild. So when people start talking about the Rockefellers and Rothschilds, how do they figure into today's equation? They were the architects of that central banking system. And lastly, it is their descendants, and this is important to understand. It might have been J.D. Rockefeller, John D. Rockefeller at the time, and James Rothschild at the time. It's the same surname, same families that are still in power today. But that gives you a little background, kind of, when we look at things today. Why are we in this mess? The reason we're in this mess is because in 1913, Wilson, who was elected president over Taft, why? Because a third-party candidate was introduced, that in the form of Theodore Roosevelt, the Bull Moose Progressive Party. He was the former president, but that was introduced. He was introduced as a third-party candidate, split the vote. So a virtually unknown person by the name of Woodrow Wilson was elected president. And by the way, again, Wilson, former governor of New Jersey. A lot of luminaries come from New Jersey. I'm thinking John Corzine. And Princeton University, former president of Princeton University. You see where all this ties together? You've got the same people or the same families back then as you do today. The lie continues. The lie was thrust upon the American people back in 1913, 1910, and even before that with the central bank attempts by Alexander Hamilton against Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton against Jackson. It's the same template, the same families. So, fast forward to today, we have a central banking. Oh, one more thing I want to mention, and then I'll move on. But think about this. The deception, the delusion was so great back then. See, the architect of the Federal Reserve Act, after it was passed and signed into law by Wilson, was Paul Warburg, to make the people believe that it wasn't a central bank at all, that you were not, if you thought it was a central bank back in 1913, you were crazy. You were called in 1913. If we would, I'm going to tell you right now, if we would be on the internet in 1913, imagine that, or watching television in 1913, we'd be called conspiracy theorists. We'd be called conspiracy kooks. Why? because the central bank really wasn't central. Well, why not? Well, look at all the branches we've got. We got one in Kansas City. We got one in Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh, and elsewhere. So it's not a central bank. You're a conspiracy kook if you think it is. But see, that's part of the delusion. So think about what people in 1913 did.
You're right. It's affected our economic stability and our economy situation since its inception. This also economic news, the IMF, world economy could end as we know it, according to Christine Lagarde. 2013 will be a make or break year. Christine Lagarde, 2013 will be make or break. According to Christine Lagarde, managing director of the International Monetary Fund, cautioned at the World Economic Forum in Davos that Europe must continue to guard against a relapse in 2013. Speaking at an event honoring women leaders hosted by Credit Suzy in partnership with Newsweek and the Daily Beast, Lagarde was joined by Egyptian human rights activist Dalia Zayda, who discussed the challenges women face in the Middle East. But back to the financial issues, it says a lot is happening in Europe, a lot is happening or happened in the U.S., and there is clearly a lot happening in Asia. A free market analysis, while this speech was made a while ago at Davos, a couple weeks ago, noting that Ms. Christine Lagarde is a dominant, regurgitating a dominant social theme that the West is surely destined to perish if savvy officials don't make the proper decisions. The West is in terrible trouble anyway. Economically, most from the discussions of the self-appointed elite that has used central banking as a weapon of creative destruction. Having obtained the awesome power of printing money, elites printed too much of it, probably on purpose, thus crashed economies first in the U.S. and then in Europe. Now Ms. Lagarde indicates, and surely she will repeat this phrase, that the same mechanism and leadership that brought us to our current situation are to be entrusted with critical decisions in 2013. She says, policymakers have to stay focused on the medium-term plan to reduce the debt. Same goes for Japan, Lagarde said. In Europe, 2012 saw many policy actions, such as the institution of the European Stability Mechanism. More work remains. We need to make sure we guard against a relapse, which will happen if we don't keep at it. Now, who is we and what is it? They are saying ingredients for a stable economy, trust and confidence are crucial to avoiding a relapse and seeing the course for a global economic stability, she explained. Trust is a crucial factor for the economy. It has to be eroded. And in that order to rebuild it, you need to face reality constantly. You need to tell people the truth if that's what they want. And that's from the article. But
see, this is all about the central banking system over in Europe.
And what they want to do, and what they have planned to do, and what they have written about doing, is having the IMF as the head of the world economy with the World Bank. It will be issued SDRs and that will replace all currencies the way the European Union had all their member currencies replaced by the euro.
And this ties back, circles right around to what I was talking about, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. Where do they govern from? Where is this going to be governed from? It's going to be governed from the British Empire, but where in London? But where in London? The city within a city, that mile where all of the power, the bankers, the illuminists, whatever you want to call these people, this is for everything. This has to take place. You see, that's why I was talking about the Rothschild and laying the foundation there, because understand it's the same families that are governing the world today and shoving the same lie down everyone's throat. Please, you've got to understand this. It's about the control of the money supply. The central banks are going to destroy the world economy to control us because we are living on a, as Jones had most adeptly said, a prison planet. That's what they want to create. What Joe just talked about, creating these SDRs. Again, watch where it's going to be. Maybe not right away, but ultimately it's going to be governed out of London.
Yeah.
And we will be subjugated once again to the British great empire.
Not only London, but China. Their global superpower, their global position turning into a superpower, promoted by Kissinger's, promoted by the Brzezinskis, the elitists, promoted by the news, promoted by the IMF. They know that Asia will be the new head of the world as far as economical, industrial production.
Well, they're the producers, the worker ants, if you will,
right, and through
the army ants.
GATT, the World Trade Organization, they have siphoned a lot of the workers, factories, industrial organizations out of our nation and into their nation. But we're going to move on here. I'm going to play one quick audio clip, and then we're going to go to phone calls. This audio clip is interesting, and the reason I'm playing this is not only to tell the story of this one Afghan city, but this explains exactly how the revolutions of Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, and Syria have taken place. Listen closely.
The Afghan president, Hamid Karzai, has ordered U.S. special forces to leave the key battleground province of Wardak. Troops there were accused of torture and the murder of civilians. Well, for more analysis on this, we're joined live by Brian Becker of the Anti-War Answer Coalition. Sir, thanks for taking the time to chat with us. Of course, we do know that NATO troops will be pulling out by 2014. So why this push now to ban U.S. special forces from the Wardak province? What's behind this decision?
Well, the U.S. Joint Special Operations efforts started initially with McChrystal and then Petraeus especially, had the idea of fomenting a kind of civil war at the local level in villages by the creation of these civilian-based militias. In addition to that, the Joint Special Operations Commission created secret CIA-led militias of Afghan soldiers too. Now, it's been a real problem for the Afghan government because these forces are in fact outside the control of the Afghan army or the Afghan police, and they are identified by the civilian population in Maidan, Wardak, and in many other areas, especially in the southern part of the country, of committing war crimes, crimes against people, all kinds of atrocities, kidnappings, murders. And it is a point of real of credibility, really, for the central government. If the central government can't tell the villagers who are being killed and kidnapped by American and their Afghan compatriots from special operations that they can be restrained, then the Afghan government seems to be nothing but a puppet. And, of course, that's very dangerous for the Afghan government during the transition period leading up to 2014. By the way, I think 5,000 to 10,000 of these special operation commandos will remain in Afghanistan after 2014 if the Obama administration gets its way.
Well, Brian, of course, the Wardak province is still a hotbed of insurgency, and given the fact that Afghan troops themselves have been implicated in some pretty severe scandals, how does that speak to Afghanistan's ability to effectively maintain calm and peace there? Is the country ready to take over security control?
Well, you know, the problem with the Afghan army and the Afghan police is that it's the creation, the proxy, the client of a foreign occupying force which is despised really by the people of Afghanistan, including many who may hate the Taliban but who realize that the foreign occupation forces, especially these special operation commandos, commit any kind of atrocity, kill the people, torture the people, set Afghan against Afghan without any accountability. And so, of course, that leaves the Afghan military and the police even if they were doing pristine work, which of course they're not. They've committed many crimes on their own, but that would leave them in a position of having no credibility with the local population. The fact of the matter is the American government has stopped trying to win the hearts and minds of Afghan people and resorted to the methods of terror, and of course that strains the credibility of their partner, the Kabul government.
Of course, the question is, I guess, whether Hamid Karzai can win the hearts and minds of his own people. Brian Becker, unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you so much weighing in there from the Answer Coalition. Brian Becker, thank you.
All right. That story and that audio is very interesting because what they are saying is in this one Afghan town, they being the U.S. government, sent in special CIA operatives to create, and this is the title, U.S. resorts to terror and stop trying to win the hearts and minds of the Afghan people. So they created a civil unrest in the city by sending in the CIA to assassinate, kidnap, and recruit other people to join them. And when the government fights back against them, they're called, it's said that they're killing their people. And this is what we've seen in every country that we've seen the overthrow through rebel forces that we fund. It has all been started by U.S. military black operations, the CIA, and funding al-Qaeda rebels. And this little village and the story of that village is basically the template for how they've overthrown these nations.
Exactly. It's I guess nothing new under the sun. It goes to that principle. Whatever works. Look, we've got now Tunisia might have been the exception, perhaps, although the rest fall in that template. Tunisia may not have been planned, or at least not time-wise. Certainly was not going to set off. Egypt was to be first. That was their, according to the information that we've developed, Egypt was to be first. But Tunisia happened, and then, of course, Egypt fell right into place. And so with that, we're looking at the same template. But by the way, I just want to alert other people in kind of a turning here, a little bit of turn away from the template of war. If you've been paying attention to, the market plunges as European crisis is back. If you saw Zero Hedge today, or was it Zero Hedge or Market Ticker? One of the two. There's a big sell-off. The sell-off today, meaning today, the 23rd or 25th of February, is the start. It's not the end. But it's also the end of the rope for our Congress if they don't get off their butts, which, according to Carl Denninger, I believe this is from Carl Denninger from TickerCon, says that he doesn't expect them to do it. Therefore, I hope you're ready, but I bet you're not. Zero Hedge talks about the European crisis being back. But it's interesting, too, as we look at this. Gold is still below $1,600 an ounce, and silver under 30. So if you have the funds, certainly that's a good time to buy. But that said, everything is out of whack. So those people who are on the television or talking about this in normal, everyday circles, if they're not recognizing how screwed up things are in terms of the ratios, man, they're not getting it. The market, just because the market, they're not getting it. They're not getting it. We talked
about the stock futures being down, the estimates being down, and the indicator. What that means is something bad's coming down the road. Now, you mentioned J.P. Morgan earlier. Did you see that there's a story today from the New Times stating emails prove J.P. Morgan committed massive mortgage fraud?
Absolutely.
And we don't have to get deep into this tonight, as we do have callers on hold and things. I'll post the article in the chat room. But you guys can just search emails prove J.P. Morgan committed mortgage fraud, massive mortgage fraud, and get the story there. But that is not new, but is being reported today. We knew about this. We reported on this before. And the Federal Reserve, along with the big six banks, continue to commit mortgage fraud, continue to commit the biggest fraud of all, which is robbing each individual worker through their taxes and their new, through the debt, the false debt, which each American now owes what? I saw the figure today.
Incredible amount of money.
It was like $1 million, over $1 million.
I'm not sure if it's I don't know if it's that high, but it's incredible.
All right.
But let me just say one thing. It was kind of funny because when I was doing research for the article that I'm about to release or will be released in the next day or two, I was looking through some transcripts of congressional hearings and also some notes about in different books as well. There was I think it was during the Pujo committee back in around 1910, 11. It's from memory. I don't recall. They were talking about, somebody said, well, Jesus, it seems like you've got maybe 50 or 60 people or families running the economic system in the United States, and whoever asked the question was corrected by the person giving the answer. I would attribute it to Paul Warburg. I could be wrong. Who said, no, sir, it's more like 7 or 8. So, I mean, again, we're looking at the same template, just as we saw the template for the CIA causing war, or when I say the CIA, I'm talking about the element there causing those, causing things to fall into or prepping things up for a one world governance. You're seeing the monetary system being prepped in the same fashion, and it all relates back to the same people and a limited number of people. So, Joe, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, we're going to go to the phones, and we're going to go to a caller who's been on hold since the very beginning of the show, and we want to thank you for your patience. We're going to go to area code 512 first. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Thanks for holding.
Good evening, Joe and Doug. How are y'all doing?
Very well.
Listen, I have a critique or a frustration I want to express with y'all. I have a request and then a praise. So I'll get the critique out of the way
Let's
first.
Hear it.
Okay. All right. Last night I was just very excited to hear your show, or eagerly anticipating it. Missed the first 10 minutes, but then caught it again this morning downloading. But the frustration I experienced last night, and I've experienced this on several shows in the past when you have guests, is their failure to get to the point. I feel like sometimes, my God, they have 30 minutes worth of material, but 3 hours to explain it in. And of Operation High Jump, hadn't even heard of it, so I'm happy to know about it, and I researched it a little bit. But of the 3 hours, maybe an hour was covered on Operation High Jump. And of that, 45 minutes was in the first hour of the show. And the rest of it was other things. I realized they're passionate about it. I realized they want to warn people. I realized they care about people. But some of the things that they said had absolutely nothing to do with Operation High Jump. And it was just extremely frustrating for me to invest my time in listening and about something and not getting, what I invested in my time to listen to. So that was extremely frustrating. It's happened on several other shows too, where they just go off on a tangent. And
I agree. So. Yeah, no, caller, look, I agree, because sometimes it's frustrating for us because, and understand this, what we do is before the program, we'll be informed of a topic, or we'll agree on a topic, for example. So we promote that topic, and then all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of left turns and right turns, and now we're so far away from what we started out to talk about. It's like bait and switch. It's like, hey, we're going to drag you in, and then we're going to sell you something different. And no, you're absolutely right on that. And you know what? We're working on that. Okay.
Well, I understand, and I appreciate what y'all do. I've never done what y'all have done, and probably could never do it. So I understand that, but I just wanted to kind of get that out. No,
I share that.
The request is this. I really wish I would have some more shows or upcoming shows that dealt with economic situation, that you had maybe a panel of experts or a couple of experts that would talk about the what is going to happen, the dollar collapse, how it's going to materialize, what we can look for. And I know you've had a few in past, but I really would like to see some more of that if possible.
Okay.
And
we can arrange that.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And the praise.
And you know what? I didn't mean to interrupt you, Colin.
Go ahead.
I apologize. I think. See, during our telephone conversations in preparation for each program or the programs we do, there's always that. Okay, how's it going to happen? How's this going to play out? What's it going to look like? We need to know. And we have found so few people who will commit to, well, we believe it's going to be, or I believe it's going to be this, this, and this in that order, or even it's going to look like we're going to get a basket of currencies. So now we're going to try to bring some people on. The closest person I think that we had on was Ann Barnhart, who really, I don't know if you heard that program with Ann Barnhart.
I did. In fact, because of it, I listened to her YouTube video. That was just fantastic. And if people haven't listened to it, about the economy is going to implode, they need to. It is unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
It is fantastic.
So, you know what, Caller? We're going to try to get some people on who will be very precise, concise, and strike at the heart of the matter. Like Ann Barnhart, if maybe we can bring her back on because we're further down the road than we were when she was on before. So, indeed, thank you for that suggestion. But we'll indeed accommodate you on that.
Okay, and the praise now. I want to thank y'all so much. I have been listening to y'all quite regularly since November, or actually since October. And you guys do a wonderful job. I eagerly await y'all, and I have learned so much. And it's really kind of tough now that when my eyes are opened, I don't even watch the news anymore, but my eyes are open. It's like, oh my God, what do I do with this information now? And I'm making preparations, and people do need to make preparations. But I thank y'all so much. You guys, if you ever have a moment of doubt as to whether you're doing the right thing, please dismiss it immediately. You guys you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and I thank you so much, and God bless you.
Well, God bless you. Well, thank you so much for that. And everything taken under advisement. The criticism, well deserved.
And on that, one thing that just to mention this, because we talked about this off air lots. Me and my dad have lately. We didn't go to school for communications. We never were radio show hosts. We really don't even know how we got into it, and we're kind of learning as we go. But one thing we do understand is we need to have the control, the authority of the show.
Oh, yeah. But you know what, too? We try to balance it out this way. When we, for example, tomorrow we're going to have Dr. Judy Wood on, we're going to let her do the talking. We're going to let her make her case. And that's what we try to do with other people. We'll give them as much time as they need to make their case, but we should kind of bump them and nudge them when they get off track, I guess, as we have found of late.
You're doing a great job. I realize you're learning, and I like I said, I've never done what y'all have done. I probably could never do it. So, but I thank you so much.
God bless you.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Definitely good call and some good advice, because stuff we've been talking about anyway. As far as the show, learning how to manage it properly.
Yeah, where's that broadcasting manual about how to run a
like when we had Tom Horn and Chris Putnam on. It was good to let Steve take that interview, really, because he had a much better understanding and had done many interviews with those gentlemen in the past to know what questions to ask.
Right.
And no matter how well laid plans you have to do a show, you can go so far off topic. But no, we are learning as we go, and we are going to continue to do.
Yeah, we're trying. Yeah, that's the thing. We're doing our best, and we didn't go to school for this. We didn't have any on-the-job experience for this. Probably, have you noticed? and certainly, I don't know what these buttons are for. All right.
We're going to take a break since we're up against the top of the hour. Then we're going to come back with your phone calls for the remainder of the third hour. So stay with us. You are listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Monday, February 25th. 3 days left until March. It's went so fast this month. Stay with us. We'll be right back, taking your calls and a little bit of news in the third hour.
You better wake up fast and listen to this, America. The Obama campaign has launched attack squads disguised as truth teams dedicated to intimidating and silencing all political dissent carried over the internet that criticizes the Marxist Obama. Truth squads specifically focused on covering up Obama's endless trail of lies, corruption, and subversion, and using the Gestapo power of our own government to police and censor the internet and shut down websites that dare to carry the real truth about Obama's Marxist coup. Remember the names of these Gestapo-style agencies at work right there in your neighborhood: KeepingHisWord.com, KeepingGOPHonest.com, and AttackWatch.com. KGB, SS, and Gestapo-style police-state gangster organizations at work to silence the important voices of patriot dissent, some of which have already been shut down by Obama's orders. Adolf Hitler would have been proud. We're the 21st century Tea Party patriots.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com. Or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
And before we come back for the third hour, I want to play this quick 43-second clip of Joe Biden and his take on Americans and how they feel on the economy.
The great collapse of 2008, they're no longer worried, I think, about our economy being overwhelmed either by Europe writ large, the EU, or China somehow swallowing up every bit of innovation that exists in the world. They're no longer, I think, worried about our economy being overwhelmed beyond our shores. And I don't think there's very little doubt in any circles out there about America's ability to be in position to lead the world in the 21st century, not only in terms of our foreign policy, our incredible defense establishment, but economically.
Well, interesting. See, now we're talking about economically. It's all right. You can press. See, I thought I was bad in pressing buttons.
Well, you jumped the gun, but that's okay.
Yeah, well, that's all right. Look, when we were talking too about earlier about the establishment of the central bank, and this is where we're at, and the economic condition that we're involved in, and even the caller before talking about bringing economic financial experts on, it really. And I want to thank my good friend who just whispered this in my ear. We hear all these names and the Vanderlips and the Walvers and stuff, but when it comes down to it, it comes down to really two families, doesn't it? It comes down to the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. Morgan,
I think the Rockefellers get more attention or put in that category. I think the real money powers, most of them, maybe the top five, we really don't know. They are not talked about.
Well, yeah, but see, if you just kind of focus on where the real concentration of wealth and power would be, It's the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. J.P. Morgan, it was pointed out to me, and I want to thank you, sir, for doing so. It was really an agent of the Rockefellers. The Morgan family is really an agent of the agent of the Rothschilds. So Morgan is an agent of the Rothschilds. Think of it that way. And also, when we talk also about the Illuminists and things, and we talk about the Luciferians, we talk about how, like, even the royal family, for example, and we talk about the Olympics. There's a lot of ethereal things that we discuss. The one thing too, isn't it interesting to note? Like, for example, if you look at the royal family for a moment, look at the interbreeding among the royal family. When I say interbreeding, I'm talking about there's an effort there. There's a concerted effort to keep their bloodline pure. I suppose that's the only way I really know how to say it at this point in the context of this discussion. But think about the banking families as well, because this is happening in the same fashion with the banking families, and in particular with the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. The same thing. The same type of template. It's that intermarital to keep the power, to keep so if it's not the money, it's the bloodline, to keep it pure, or to concentrate the wealth, or to concentrate the power. And that's the larger issue here. So two significant families, Rothschilds and Rockefellers. Morgan, by the way, J.P. Morgan, again, an agent of the Rothschilds. So just want to clear that up.
We're going to get back to the phones. We're going to go to William next. He's been on hold since the beginning of the show. We got a lot of callers, so we're going to try and keep them a few minutes each. We got about 20 people on hold. And William, you are live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hello, Hagmann and Hagmann. You guys have a first class act show, totally. And
Thank
you guys are in for a really good show tomorrow with Judy Wood. I've been working with her a little bit on energy to mass events and other things. So
I'm excited about this.
Yeah.
Caller, you said you've been working with her a little bit on that. What can we expect? Give us a taste of what we can expect to learn.
Well, she's basically the way I've been explaining to her with technology and industry and everything, and a lot of gunslingers been trying to give me an exorcism for like the last 10 minutes. I've been in industry. I don't want to go too much into my history. People can look me up on the internet. William Stillings. Just type in Stillings Mars. I grew up in agency all my life. My father worked for Lockheed Skunk Works. I was inducted into the CIA with my father as a father-son thing. To just give you in a nutshell, I've been teleporting on and off planet since I was about age 12. And this is actually corroborated by quite a few Apollo astronauts and quite a few other people, not limited to Andrew Basiago, Regina Dugan, former head of DARPA, and Laura Eisenhower, the granddaughter of President Eisenhower. In a nutshell, tomorrow, basically, she's going to explain to you longitudinal electromagnetic waves tied to a time domain, and how that's an energy to mass event when you have a negative crossover section, that becomes a field, and in that higher energy state wins over lower energy value steel of World Trade Center. And no two things can occupy the same space at the same time. It's basically going to go into disassociation of matter, and mostly about how many agencies, companies, departments, and states and countries have participated in the and keeping the timeline alive, basically.
Okay. Well, I know you didn't call for that reason. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
Right.
No.
I wanted to ask William about March 27th. I saw him mention that in chat many times, and I'm very curious.
And I will give you the best answer I can. As to why that day, I still do not know. And I had been posting since December that they were gearing up when all my friends found out what was going to transpire. And there's going to be a few places in Black Hawk County in Iowa, and also Lynn County in Iowa. And watch for Colorado. There's a Black Hawk in Colorado. Watch for that. You'll be watching for locations where there's usually underground things. You'll be also looking in the Oregon area. And, just to
What are we looking for?
You'll be looking for, basically it'll be a gun collection thing. It won't be a major thing. But as far as the effort that they're trying to do and the effort that's being done is going to be a step up, and it's going to involve multiple nationalities, multiple countries, be intermixed in later on down the road, and not too far, about a month, if even that, will be more specific. A lot of Chinese troops, a lot of this troops, a lot of Hispanic troops. It's going to be a multitude of things, and being that NATO's trying to do crap like that, in our favor, NATO historically fails, so they're not going to win. And,
are you talking NATO or the United Nations?
Well, NATO. NATO's going to play a big part, and and they are, and I think they are.
No, I just want to be clear on that.
United Nations fails all the time, so that's all favorable.
The information that you're sharing, I might have asked this last time you called. I remember you called maybe about a month ago. Are you currently in any type of service, whether it be military, governmental?
I'm a lieutenant in the United States Navy.
Okay. Presently?
They haven't shown me any paperwork.
I mean, are you presently serving as a lieutenant?
I am presently in the United States Navy.
Okay. I want to make sure.
Now,
I heard that correctly.
My question is, is there any concern on your part about mentioning any of this information, seeing as you are currently still serving under a governmental role?
In coming forward, I am under whistleblower protection laws, for whatever that may surmount to. No, I've been talking for quite a bit, and quite a few, fellow servicemen, Andrew Bishago, and a couple of very respected Apollo astronauts, have been, at their own pace, have been coming forward, and very much been more public about wanting to go back to Mars and the Mars colonization program in 1980. Which is a very real thing. If anybody believes NASA stuff, please. What are you going to use a parachute in 8 millibar for? 8 millibar out of 1,000 millibar, one bar, one Earth atmosphere, and altitude doesn't get thicker higher up, or atmosphere doesn't. I mean, really. I mean, who are you going to believe?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just ludicrous. It was great for developmental purposes, for people to have their own life and very quiet life. But as you've all even stated, that it's 2013, it's time. It's been time to move on. And I've been coming forward since 2008, since they really pulled some nasty stuff. And and there's been quite a bit of involvement on my part, and there's people want to I don't care if anybody believes me, but they at least should listen. And I do have experience in the field, and there is some major gun taken. They're very, very serious about that. And all honesty, people, the original reason for the gun concern back in the 80s, when a lot of this started, back in the early 80s, before a lot of you were born, was honestly because it was just because the inadvertent attention that ammunition discharges in the presence of a gravity generator. It oscillates the mercury in the primer. And that's just fact. That's why we never teleported with ammunition or guns, and we never take a gun to Mars. And just, people just won't get it until they either experience, have it crammed in front of them, and maybe in some cases, some people FEMA camp, I guess.
Until it's too late. Well, I want to thank you for your call, William. We got to move on. We got lots of callers.
All right.
Look forward to hearing from you again. You take care.
Thank you.
All right. We are going to move on to area code 561. You're up next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hi, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Excellent. What's on your mind? Yes, we can.
Yeah, we can hear you. Let me check to see.
Okay,
how's
that's great.
it going
That's
with
great.
you?
I just wanted to let you know I'm an avid fan of your radio talk show. Well, I actually am here to talk about.
Have you been medicated for that yet? I'm sorry. Seriously, caller. Thank you so much for your kind words, but no, thank you very much for your kind words. I didn't mean to take your time up. Go ahead.
It's all right. It's all right. Well, I actually have solid proof that Obama's been doing some pretty funny stuff. Well, for instance, I have papers out in front of me right now that he's actually enacting a bill to make mandatory implants for nanobots in our brains. And I feel as if he's in cooperation with China and many corporations in America to basically control us and force us to buy, random items that we don't want.
Okay. Now, let me ask you a question, caller. First of all, you say you have papers in front of you. What's the origination? Where do these papers come from? Can we find them online? Is this open source information, or is this something that's not open source?
Well, I've actually found them off the deep web.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure if you know what the deep web is, but basically it's various sources from internal government sources that I have exact contacts to. Basically, if you would like to see them, I'll post them on your website. But I feel as if he is in cooperation with aliens.
And I suspect you're not talking about the illegal immigrant aliens, right?
No, I'm actually talking about the little green men. Yes.
Okay, all right. And what makes you believe this? Just from what your findings have relate to you or suggest?
I have internal government sources, and I've seen various things in pictures of Obama where he's had he's had certain like certain weird adjustments. It's very strange. It's if you look at like various portraits of him, it shows in the background like blemishes and such, and I feel as if that's some sort of technology that they're using to make him some sort of hologram or such.
Do you think? Okay. Do you think that? Because we've had people, and folks, let's not go too far out here. And the caller is making a point here, because we've all seen pictures of him, and sometimes I look at him, I'm thinking, man, is this the same guy I saw yesterday in the news? In terms of his physical appearance. Now, I'm not alleging anything or anything like that. Have you noticed that though? Just kind of subtle differences. From day to day or from week to week, it's just something I noticed. Again, I'm not going anywhere too far out there
You know,
in the quads or the weeds. I'm just saying.
I feel as if that he's actually a different person. He's like a some sort of surrogate person. I mean, he's definitely not the Obama that most people voted for. You see what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah, I believe I do.
I think it's in coordination with aliens. I really do.
All right. It's very interesting, and we've been talking about the alien threat, that being a demonic threat, in a bunch of our previous shows, and we're, just as curious to see how it manifests, if it does manifest. I want to thank you for your call. We have to move on.
God bless you.
Nigger tits.
Oh, goodness.
What do you
gotta love the people who come on here. You said the racial slur and followed it up with a female body part. But people who do that, people who are in chat and waste their time.
Really, we got to do that.
To do this, I got to pray for you guys, because
that's fine.
People need help. I mean, who has the time to go through other people's talk shows just to bother them? Unless you're getting paid for it, which I understand. Because, at least you're doing something and not sitting back collecting a welfare check when you have the ability to work. But, really? You're going to sit on hold for a whole 2 hours to be able to throw that little word in there in the end that does nothing but make me write your number down and never answer it again? I just want to say to all you people who do that, to waste all your time, to wait to come in to say something you think is so funny, or you think it's going to hurt our feelings or someone else's feelings. I'm going to pray for you. I hope you guys find Jesus. And thank you, Pastor Paul. He is the best I've seen. He deals with that stuff all the time, and he never loses his cool.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to go to Pierre next. He's on hold. Then we're going to go to Sheila. Pierre, you're live on the Hagmann Report.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Good, Pierre.
Hey, that I don't know everything about the sequestration. I don't even know how to pronounce that. Is it sequestration? What is that? That deal that's going on with Obama. The whole sequestration thing that's affecting our defense.
Yeah, that's how they say.
Sequestration, is that what they're calling it?
Sequester or sequestration. Yeah.
Well, you gotta love these terms that they come out with. But anyway.
Well, Pierre, it's kind of like when people talk about hypothecation, rehypothecation. They throw deliberate. They make it deliberately difficult, so people like ordinary people can't understand what's going on. It's real simple. If you run a family budget, you should be able to run Washington. Sequestration.
Exactly. What I got out of it, what I got out of it, guys, is very, very, very simple. This sequestration thing, I'm just going to clear it off. It equals the emasculation of the U.S. military, period. We can't even fuel our ships. Like the Abraham Lincoln, she's supposed to be ready to undergo, deployment trials for going overseas. She can't go anywhere because, sequestration's coming and no money means no fuel. There's another carrier we have that's in dry dock, I believe, near D.C. She can't get refitted because of sequestration and lack of funds. We go back a few months ago, the Marine Corps is being chopped down to 22,000 plus. We look at DOD losing 800,000 civilian employees coming up March 1st. And it's just all this stuff is happening. And it's like this domino effect. And that's what we're just seeing on the defense end. On the diplomatic end, we're looking at the consolidation of Africa. It's not like we're going to take all of Africa. I mean, South Africa is going to be to the South Africans, and East Africa is probably going to go to our adversaries, but maybe like Mother Russia. But a lot of things are pointing towards the Middle East. All the while, the markets are getting ready to collapse too, which is something that a lot of people still need to keep in mind. Now, where am I going with all of this? It's high time for everyone to start realizing it's time to start playing for keeps. Okay? You got a president, a man who's in a presidency who shouldn't be in here, who's running JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command. JSOC is his little private army, okay? And JSOC's going to do his bidding. And if it means he has to take out some people in JSOC to prove a point, i.e. like what happened with elements of Dev Group, SEAL Team 6 that went in to do the Bin Laden hit, he'll do it. None of that stuff has been coincidental, folks. None of it. And then when you think of gun control, this really isn't about gun control. It's all about people control, the bottom line. And if they can't win the hearts and minds of people over through psych warfare, then they'll do it by force.
Oh, Pierre, man, you are right on the money with that. It's about the control and conditioning of the people. You're exactly right.
It's just like how it was in Vietnam. What was the whole point of Vietnam? To win the hearts and minds of the people, basic PsyOps 101. And that's what we're seeing happening now, but on a much more detailed level at different levels, like three-dimensional chess. And it's a very, very scary situation. The other thing for us, you guys do your show. I co-host on mine, and there's others out there that are like us that are broadcast journalists doing what we got to do. What a lot of people don't realize is that we're not going to be on the air much longer. These people got the plan set. CISPA is going to run through whether Congress clears it or not. The president made sure he's going to do an executive action on it. When the CISPA runs, folks, there won't be a Blog Talk Radio. There won't be a Hagmann Exposing the Enemy or any of the other shows that are out there. You all have to understand just how close we are to the edge. And then spiritually, I don't even know where to begin except to say that has anyone else in a chat room, has anyone been experiencing, emotional disturbances, like you flare up with anger for no reason, there's too much confusion or befuddlement going on? You know something's going on, but you can't put your finger on it because you can't see it, but you can feel it. I mean, am I making sense here? Do you understand where I'm going with this?
Oh yeah, absolutely, and I think we've all experienced it. It's at a certain level. I mean, at different levels, I should say, Pierre. Yeah.
Well,
there's a spiritual disruption.
But you see, it's all the more reason what you guys have been saying, to prepare yourselves spiritually for what is going on. And right now, what we're going into is another level of spiritual warfare. Because let me tell you something today, folks. I had no reason to be upset. I had no reason to be angry inside. I swear to you, for the last 2 hours of work, it was like hell on earth for me. Inside, I was burning up and I was angry, and I didn't do anything wrong. No one ticked me off. It was like something else flipped the switch. Okay? And I have no reason, believe me, guys, I have no reason to make this up. I haven't felt like this in years. Okay.
What about fatigue, though? Have you been? Fatigue is another thing that I've been hearing a lot. Between fatigue and anger, or fatigue and emotional, kind of like you're going through male or female menopause, where your emotions are on edge. It's like that spiritually. So I can relate to that. Yeah. So what is it though? What is it? It's a spiritual disruption.
You're asking me what it is. I think what I'm feeling, I think what a lot of us are feeling, and what's about to come up next month. You see, aside from the physical aspects that the president is going to be traveling to Israel to do his thing there to receive, quote, a medal of distinction, or the medal of distinction from Israel, which I have to scratch my head at. Why is this man receiving a civilian medal of honor, essentially, from a country who he despises, who he doesn't even like, who he wouldn't even get paid to?
Hey, Peter, let me just mention this. This was discussed with me by somebody very close to me, a good friend of mine, connected into the intelligence venue. The day that Obama will travel to Israel is the day that they pick the lamb for Passover. Does that make you think anything at all?
Yes, it does. Actually, it does, because when you think about this, and those of you who are really attuned to scriptures, I know you two are, is that Passover happened. The last time we realized Passover happened majorly was in the Bible when Christ went to Jerusalem on Passover. Now we're going to see Obama go into Jerusalem on Passover. And what also makes this significant is the connection to Daniel, the book of Daniel, where we will see the anointed one setting up the abomination of desolation. At the same time, or roughly around the same time, if all of you know what's happening at the Vatican now, the cardinals are upping the election date for succession for Peter the Roman. All this is connecting. So we're looking at one or two things happening, or one or three things happening. One, we're going to be seeing the anti-pope coming on stage. That's who he is, the anti-pope, the false prophet, the spiritual leader of evil, the antithesis of what we believe as Christians. We're also looking at the coming on the coming of the Antichrist. What makes that interesting is because he's going to be there in front of us, and no one's going to know who he is until something bad happens to him. What do I believe that's going to be? I believe someone is going to try to assassinate him, because in the book it says, I'm not sure if it's Daniel, I believe it's in Revelation, that the Antichrist will suffer, or will appear to have suffered, a grievous head wound. Well, to me, that only comes out to one or two things. Either someone's going to detonate a bomb and something's going to go in his head and make it look bad, or he's going to get taken out with a high caliber round at distance. So it's going to be an assassination attempt. He will miraculously heal himself in front of everyone. Thus, everyone drops to their knees and assumes that this man is the living Messiah. At the same time, or a little bit prior to it, Obama is going to be up in Jerusalem, quite potentially setting up the abomination of desolation. What does that mean? I have no idea, because I don't know the future, and it's not going to be revealed until that time. Thus, we need to have discernment and have our eyes open. But that's what I think, in my heart of hearts, that's what I really think is going to happen. Now, everyone's going to have their own point of view. That's just me. We're going to be looking at a series of successive evil spiritual events playing out before us. And at the same time, we're going to be seeing civil strife going on in our country and other parts of the world. We're probably going to see see a conflict go from cold to hot really quick. It could be Japan and China, or it could be what's going to happen with Israel and Syria. It's all about to go hot, but these things will happen. Everyone keeps saying, well, I look forward to going to heaven and being with the Lord. You know what, folks? Let me just put this out in the open, so if I offend anyone, forgive me. Quit looking to be with the Lord at the end, because all that matters is where you are now, and you need to be thinking about the journey. I'm not one that's going to surrender easily. I know you're not, Doug. I know you're not, Joe. I know some of you people shouldn't be willing to surrender to the enemy. You got to remember, you're going to have to fight. You're going to have to make a stand. And last I remember, Christians aren't people who just lay down and allow the lions to come and eat them. Okay? David didn't. He took down Goliath. I'll use another analogy. The Spartans fought Xerxes at Thermopylae. The 300, I mean, look what they did, even though they all died. But they took the stand. You all need to draw a line and take the stand, and remember that no matter what, you have an obligation to speak out and stand against evil. Quit thinking about the end. Think about where you're at, and think about the journey that it's going to entail, because it's going to be, it's called tribulations for a reason, folks. It's called tribulations for a reason. So just think about that, okay? I'm not trying to be offensive, but I want you all to think about this, for real. Because those of you who are willing to just take me, Lord, take me, what if he doesn't? Has anyone ever thought about that equation? And then back to the original point, Joe and Doug, I really do think that we are about to witness the unveiling of some very serious but subtle aspects of evil tossed in our faces. And then for those who know about Benedict, Joseph Ratzinger, he's not going anywhere. He's going to stay in Vatican City. And no matter what the International Crimes Court or whatever they're called, wants to go in to get him, they can't, because Vatican City is a nation within a nation. They have a Swiss Guard that's very elite. They have the Vatican police. If anyone tries to go in and get him, it's probably going to be a bloodbath. And that would be a very bad day. But that's just what I think, guys. That's just what I think. There's other callers going on that are waiting, but you guys can chew on that for a bit. But that's just my 2 cents worth on this, for real.
All right, your 2 cents is always well received here, and we appreciate the information. Very wise person, and has your finger on the pulse of what's going on.
But by the way, Pierre, sequestration is nothing more than just an across-the-board spending cut. It's a fancy name for what they deferred, the fiscal cliff business here a couple of months ago at the end of the year. What they deferred is not coming to pass in the form of across-the-board spending cuts. They call that sequestration. And it's about to hit set the Pentagon and domestic programs here this week. So, I mean, that's all that is. They might as well just say across-the-board spending cuts and get rid of the word sequestration.
I just think I agree with you, but I think at the end of the day, if anyone really wants to know, bottom line, it's the end of the U.S. military as we know it. Folks, without our military's ability to defend us, we don't have much standing in the way of an invasion. We don't. If you guys think, for instance, say like China or Russia is going to launch nukes at us, which I could see happening, will we respond immediately? No, we're not. Read Presidential Directive, Decision Directive 60 that William Jefferson Clinton signed. He essentially made a deal with the Russians who were complaining of our strategic nuclear assets always being at the ready. And he just essentially said, hey, guess what? We'll have 50% of our forces at the ICBM complexes, at the SAC air bases, and at our naval bases in port at any given time. And you can hit these places, and guess what? We'll absorb the first strike. We'll absorb the blunt, the brunt of a nuclear strike. Who's to say we're going to be able to respond after that? Because traditionally, folks, in case anyone hasn't remembered or has forgotten, if a launch is coming our way and it's confirmed, we launch back. But Clinton changed all that. W came in office. He changed the PDD number. So I don't know what it is now. But the fact of the matter is we no longer have the ability to truly defend ourselves the way we need to. And when it comes down to brass taxes, folks, you are the resistance. You are it. You're the front lines. Don't expect help coming back anytime soon. Next thing you know, they're going to say, well, we don't have enough money to fuel our planes to bring our troops back home. You know what that adds up to. So it's just like I said, food for thought, guys. Food for thought.
Thanks, buddy. All right.
All right?
Very good, sir. Great. Take it easy, Pierre.
Yep, you too.
Yeah. All right, man. And Joe, I just want to reiterate that one fact. I just find it very odd, too, the fact that Obama is going over, it will be in Israel on the very day that they picked that sacrificial lamb for Passover. And could it be, meaning, could it have a meaning for any, what does that mean? Does it have a meaning? I don't know. The associations with Obama and Lincoln to Lincoln. And
I'll have to find it again, but I did have some information on that, but I'll have to.
But by the way, I just want to state clearly here. I don't believe for 1 second that Obama is the Antichrist. Okay, just to clear that, in case anyone has a question.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, I don't believe that for a moment. If just as an FYI. But yeah. I just find it very interesting. Do I think that he could be a sacrificial lamb for a greater purpose? Yeah, I do. Looking at the bigger picture, could it happen? Anything could happen. But I think that could be. As it was told to me before, it's not what we believe. It's what the power brokers, the power elite, the people in power, the others, if you will, it's what they believe. And belief is the driver of action. Belief is the driver of action. So
we're talking about what they believe as far as what they want to implement.
Right.
It's not important what they believe when it comes to our spirituality or anything else, or our beliefs. It's what they believe. It's what their plans are that we need to watch.
Well, I disagree to an extent because I believe that it's my understanding their belief is the fact that they're on the other side of the Bible. They're
right.
on the bad side, okay?
Right.
The evil side. We
already know the battle and who wins at the end. So, I think you're right, but and for what you're saying is correct. It's not important what we think as far as what's happening on this world or how it's going to happen. It's a matter of what they believe, and it's a matter of how the Lord brings about His prophecy.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Okay. We're going to continue on the phone lines here, and we're going to go to 716 next. Thanks for holding. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. 716, you are live.
Oh, hello.
Hey, hello to Western New York. What's up?
Hey, I think you're doing a wonderful job there. I took communications courses, and I can't even find my way around your website.
Well,
let me see. I was going to ask you whether anybody is taking this particular issue seriously, where I've read that there's a final verdict rendered in common law court against the Vatican and Canada for genocide.
Yeah, I saw something about that. I don't. Is
this one of those things where they're going to make a citizen's arrest big deal, or is there any force behind this punch?
Look, you know what, caller? I saw that. I don't know what to make of that. I don't know the authenticity or the legitimacy of that. I really don't. But certainly, I don't see anybody. I don't see, because remember, caller, we had a citizens grand jury for Obama. Now, in a perfect world, or in the real sense, a citizens grand jury is supposed to have power by law. And they came back with a verdict that Obama was guilty of criminal, certain things, where that would cause him to be arrested. Did we see that happen? Of course not, because, who's going to volunteer for that job? Well, I think it's the same way, regardless of what the crime, what the accusation, what the legality would be, regardless of all that. Can you imagine? You wouldn't get to the gate of the Vatican. It's not going to happen. But I don't even know. I've seen the reference to genocide. Genocide with respect to who? What are we talking about?
Oh, it's it had to do with the settlement schools that were run by the Catholics in Canada when settlement schools were big, and they were trying to wipe out the Native American population.
Okay. Yeah, look, this is entering into an area which I don't know, but I certainly, for the practical sense, I don't believe that we're going to see anything come of that. But that's my opinion. I don't have anything to base it on, except
you do have the unprecedented trip of Queen Elizabeth to the Vatican right in that period of time, too. And
that's true.
Also, the possibility, after I read the article a second or third time, where I thought, I wonder whether that really does have to do with why the current Pope, isn't going to leave the Vatican after his retirement. At the same time, I have to say that my father-in-law was on the Bertrand Russell war criminals list, and he didn't look very frightened about it.
Okay.
So,
well,
okay, just thought I'd ask. I know you do have the Canada connection, or at least the Canadian newspaper, and I just wondered myself.
Well, I'll tell you what. We will we will address that. I'll talk to Judy McLeod, and editor of Canada Free Press, and we'll have a discussion about that. And if there's anything to it, we'll talk about it for sure. And you can check our website as well. But at this point, I just don't see anything like that taking place. But like I said, we'll keep you posted.
Okay, I do appreciate it. And thank you very much. I love your show, and I'm looking forward to hearing Judy Woods on tomorrow night. She does just a wonderful presentation.
Yeah, if you haven't, well, obviously you've seen the video series about that. Yeah, very good.
I was stunned and sat in front of the computer for hours, just going, So, well, thank you very much, and on to your next caller.
All right, thank you. God bless.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting show. Her video series, I don't have the website, or wheredidthetowersgo.com, I think.
Yeah,
I don't have the notes in front of me here.
Find it right here. It is wheredidthetowersgo.com. Also, drjudywood.com. And there's a period between the DR and Judy on the Dr. Judy Wood.
By the way, wheredidthetowersgo.com has the video series that last caller was talking about. So I just want to mention that.
All right, we're going to move on to the phones. Back to the phones here, as we got a lot of callers on hold. I don't think we definitely won't be able to get to everyone tonight, and I'm sorry about that. But we will do our best to run through these calls. We are going to go. This is not Sheila, but the same area code 856. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey guys, how you doing tonight?
Very well.
Good. What's on your mind?
Well, you guys touched on so many subjects tonight. It's really tough to figure out where to pick up, but I'll just wing it off the top of my head. You were talking about sequestration a little bit earlier.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel that it's a bunch of nonsense, and I'm going to explain to you why. Right before Tim Geithner was stepping down, he said, go ahead and raise the debt ceiling to infinity, and Ben Bernanke makes a comment that he's going to keep printing money until morale improves. So I don't see the problem, unless it's a manufactured crisis. Where's the problem? Really?
Well, I think we're in the midst of a manufactured crisis, and I think it's going to be a continuing crisis manufactured until the solution kicks in, and we're back to the Hegelian dialectic, if you will, where a solution's been created for the problem that hasn't been, or is in the process of being created. That's my take on it. But I think you're right. No one.
Yeah. And what's worse, them printing the money or them using the money they print to buy mortgage-backed securities? I mean, which is more disturbing?
Well, the worst part about it, I feel, is a lot of people that I know that aren't in our loop. I agree with about 90% of everything that you guys already covered tonight, that you guys covered anyway. But the people that aren't in the loop, they're saying, oh, well, they want our tax money. They just want our money. But you don't understand whether taxes are actually, your dues that you pay to England is basically to stay here. That's what your taxes go to. Okay? Now, the second point that I would like to make is they don't want your money. They want to subjugate you. They want to tax you until you start losing property is pretty much what it comes down to. Taxation is could be punitive also. And that's what they're using it as a tool. And my argument always is, well, why do you say that they want your money when they have a printer sitting right next to them? If they want money, they just click a button. Okay.
Fantastic. Ask yourself why. And caller, thank you very much, because why are people asking themselves if they have basically the ability to print or add another zero to their digital balance sheet? Why do they need our money? And you said it. You said it right out. Absolutely. Yep. Fantastic.
Well, just to expand on it, just a hair more, if you don't mind, just indulging me for a minute. So that's why I feel that the sequestration is just a bunch of nonsense. But it does have real consequences to it because, like you described earlier, they do control the timeline. They could drop the economy on our heads whenever they want, because what Ben Bernanke, the federal Tim Geithner, and their collusion in overseas banking cabals. Well, I'm more or less like to refer to them as an oligarchy. What they've done is they've placed our economy in a suspended animation. So they are controlling the strings now because the dollar is tethered to nothing. It's tethered to it's not tethered to reality. So what they're doing is there's $85 billion a month that the Federal Reserve is printing. I have a very strong suspicion. I know what they're doing with this money. They're buying up the corporations on the stock market. Now,
okay.
To expand into that just a little bit further is this. I'm gonna digress for a second, but then I'll hit that point one more time. Our senators and congressmen on the Hill, they do not represent us. They represent the corporate state. They don't represent the United States citizens. We are not represented on the Hill. You can say one thing on TV, go look how they vote. Okay, everybody who voted up MDAA 1867, especially with the damning civilian attachments of 1021, 1030, and 1031. I mean, these should all be tried for treason because right there it shows you that they are not representing you. As a matter of fact, they signed your death warrant. Now, that's part of my argument right there, okay? They don't represent you. They are not beholden to the Constitution. They are there to further the corporate states of America. The United States of America is registered in Delaware as a corporation. And a lot of people don't know that. We live in a corporate state. We don't live. That's why the health care bill went through. It wasn't a matter of constitutionality through the Supreme Court of the United States. It was a business decision.
Okay. Go on.
Going backwards to what I was just touching on a few minutes ago about, well, you can't print your way to prosperity. We already know that. We're in a currency war right now, and all nations that are trying to protect or preserve their internal oligarch wealth are purchasing gold. Gold builds nations. Silver is the working class man's currency on the street. But the point I'm trying to make is if they're buying gold, that means that when this whole thing comes apart, they need to lean back on a solid asset or a commodity that's going to rebuild their nation. That's how you know that the crash is going to come, and it is inevitable. And that's why all these clowns on the Hill just go along with to get along. And Boehner, you're watching political theater. You are watching all theater. It's all made up.
Of course.
Yep, it's all made up.
Very well said. Absolutely, political theater. You made some excellent points here from the comment about the income tax. The whole, just to add onto what you said, the income tax was enacted to centralize centralizing power, if you will. But also it's important for people to understand. And no one asked that question that you brought up and we discussed. If they can print as much money as they want, why do they need ours? And for two reasons. One is so we never get rich, or never have that ability, and also to stave off hyperinflation because they have to control the volume of money.
Exactly. Oh my goodness! Thank you for bringing that up because I don't mean to interrupt you, but I got to throw this out here real quick. We run deficits and we live in a debtor society. When we run deficits, we print more money. When we go to our local car dealership and purchase a new vehicle, the Federal Reserve prints that money and it goes right to the bank. Now you default on that loan and you're still on the hook for the note to the bank. So the point I'm trying to make is, what did Karl Marx say years ago? He said, if you ever want to enslave a nation, loan the money with interest. Okay? Now, right. I mean, it's more of a Marxist type socialist, centralized power struggle that's going on here. But something I do want to make a very, very strong point of is all these nations are in on it, all of them, every single one of them. We don't have conflict with Iran. We don't have conflict with Saudi Arabia, with Afghanistan. What we're there for is like our standing orders back in, 1991, is to cap off the wells when we first invaded Iraq with Norman Schwarzkopf. Why? To make a scarcity. When you make a, we're not there for the oil. We're there to cap off the oil and slow the production so Saudi Arabia makes more money.
Ah, there you go.
And back. I mean, how many people cannot see this? I see it because the scales were taken off my eyes exactly to the date of September 11th. No, I apologize. September 13th, 2001. When I had a harsh reality hit me in the face like a sledgehammer. Now, after that, I became a very astute study of everything that's been going on in this world that, and it put me into a depression. I'll be quite honest with you, because I didn't think that the world actually worked like this, but it does. And, if I told you that Barack Obama, or Barry Soetoro, whatever you want to call him, he has back-channel communications into Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. He converse. They talk. They're buddies. Yeah. You know why? Because they want the end of Israel. Obama's not going to bomb his Muslim brothers. They want to take down Israel.
Yeah. Like we were talking about this, the Kissinger, being the head of the State Department, had these back channels with somebody he was holding off on making a peace deal with for the Vietnam War, and he used these to manipulate the presidential administrations to a certain degree. And they've had these channels ongoing.
Right. And you know what they call that? You know what they call that? They call it controlled opposition, and you're seeing it constantly. You are witnessing it constantly. Well, anyway, the point is, let's face the facts here right now, and I hope your listeners are paying attention. Okay. We are on record for funding Al Qaeda. We are on record for USAID, Ray LaHood's son, Sam LaHood, getting arrested in Northern Africa because they found out that he was supplying arms to the opposition of Assad in Syria. Okay, Assad's not the monster here. We need to overthrow him because he's a petro-nation that stuck his middle finger up to us and said we're not going to give up our gold. Okay, all these nations we're trying to take them down like dominoes. Why? Because what's the first thing we do when we overthrow a nation over there? We install a central bank the next day.
Right.
And that's it. Right. This is your war on terror. You have an elusive, borderless, uniformless terrorist cell that in the Bush doctrine says that we can chase it all ends of the earth and we don't need permission from anybody. Okay? It's ludicrous. And the reason why I know that Senate and Congress are in on this also is because the Senate holds the power of the purse and you will not defund these wars. But they sit there and complain about it on TV. Oh, these wars, these illegal wars, blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? They're part of the problem. And I yield the floor. Go ahead.
No, you know what? I think everything you said is exactly right. And people have to understand, too, that the United States, and that's why Benghazi was so important. Regular listeners, you've heard me talk about this before, new listeners. Benghazi would if we could sit down and have an intelligent, honest, real conversation about Benghazi, if the truth would be known, we're the muscle for the Saudi Arabian agenda, and we have to understand that. But the other question is now, well, who's Saudi Arabia answering to? And of course, we go to that New World Order, one world agenda type thing. But man, you got it. You got it right on the. I mean, thank you. What a great bit of information.
But I do have an answer for who Saudi Arabia does answer to. I have your answer. If you would like to have that. The answer to the neocons, and do not take this in a derogative manner because this is not a curse word. It's called Zionism. It's called Zionist. Harmon Karzai is a Zionist. Joe Biden is an admitted Zionist. They're not Jewish, It has nothing to do with the Jewish religion. It has to do with the theocracy.
I'm glad you differentiated that word Zionist from Israel or from the Jews, the Jewish religion. I'm glad you did that.
Did you know the Jewish people that live in Israel hate Zionists?
Well, yes. I'll tell you what.
Right.
I apologize. We're at the close of the program already. God bless you, my friend.
Yes. All right.
Thanks for the call.
You got it.
Wow. Great job, folks. We're out of time.
I should have more time. We never have enough time. If we could go 4 hours, we could go 5 hours. We could go 6 hours. But tomorrow,
thank you.
Dr. Judy Wood will be joining us to talk about her book and 9/11 and what her findings are. Do not miss a show, 8 to 11.
And tell your friends about it. Because it's going to be purely scientific, no conspiracy theory. It's all science. It's all the engineering. It's all the what and the forensic evidence and scientific evidence.
And God bless each and every one of you. Hope you're here tomorrow night. You guys take care. Have a great, relaxing evening. Get into your Bibles if you have a chance. Good night.
And hit your knees. Good night.